Good evening. Welcome to the Township Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, October 24th. Mr. Kent, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, and do we have an approval of the consent agenda to start with?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Okay, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I
Mansour?
have a question on actually each one of the items, so.
Okay, so we can pull those out then and
I
add them to our
would
resolution.
appreciate that, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
So do we have an approval of the regular agenda, or a motion for it?
Mr. Chairman, I am requesting that the public hearing for Ring Screw LLC and their request for industrial facilities tax exemption, that public hearing be put ahead of the Green Valley subdivision for the petitioners to address it, and that after that public hearing, we then take item 6A on the resolution, 6B, the resolution for Ring Screw, handle that after their public hearing as an accommodation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Do we have the fire chief here to talk about the fire department topics?
I think Mr. Guzak was going
No,
to
we
make a
don't.
motion.
And I wanted to make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we move the fire department review until November 9th because he's unable to attend today. He's not feeling well.
Okay.
Okay, any other changes to the agenda? Okay, there's been a motion and some changes. Is there a second?
I'll support.
Okay,
Thank you.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with that, we'll move to citizen comments, and we allow 3 minutes for each individual to make a comment. And we ask you to state your name and address, and to please come forward. We'll start on the left side in the front of the room
Mr.
and
Chair.
move towards the back. Yes,
Only those things that are not on the agenda. The public hearing will have its own time.
right. If you're speaking on behalf of the public hearing for the street paving or ring screw, we ask you to hold off with those comments until we come to the public hearing for those items. Okay, because we'll have time allotted for those two subjects, okay? So if you're here to speak on another matter that's on the agenda or something that's not on the agenda this evening, feel free to come up. We'll start here on the left side of the room. And yes, Mr. Russian, please go to the microphone, and if you want to give your name and address. And
3 minutes. George Russian, 2441 Valley Lane. I'm talking about where we got from the Road Commission, Proposal 3. And there they have Proposal 2, which they already signed, and a lot of people want Proposal 2. But Proposal 3 is a lot cheaper because in Proposal 2, they want to do a lot of miscellaneous.
we're going to have a public hearing on that issue in just a few minutes, if you want to
Oh,
hold your
is that
time,
on
unless you
there?
have something else you want to speak on. I don't want to interrupt you, but we're going to have some time allotted just for that issue. Nope, we're going to do the public hearings separately. So any topic other than the ring screw and the special assessment, we'd ask you to come forward and address the board. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Rick Etheridge. I live at 3086 Strong Heights, about a half a mile down the road.
Welcome.
And I'm here to talk about a neighbor of mine, 4 houses down from me. He has pigs, goats, and chickens. And I came up here and asked about it. They said it's not allowed in a residential neighborhood. And then I called the lawyer trying to find out what's the deal. And I have no answer, and that's been 3 weeks ago. And that man still has the goats and chickens and the pigs running around in his yard. And I want to, if it's against the rules, why isn't it being enforced?
Mr. Laddie?
Well, I'm happy to weigh in, and I have had some conversations with our code enforcement officers, and we're in the midst of discussions between our zoning ordinance requirements, which lay out a 10-acre minimum for any farm activities in the township, and the Right to Farm Act that does not have any size limitations or talk about livestock limitations if you meet the requirements of the state of Michigan. And so right now, between code enforcement and my office, we're trying to reconcile those two differences. And they've registered the complaint. We realize that there's going to be some level of action taken. We're just not exactly sure whether we'll be in circuit court or in district court, or exactly what we're going to be entitled to ask for. So I know it's maddening for you, but we've got it on our plate and we're working on it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Continuing, yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Janice Lixie.
If you could do that in the microphone.
Oh, my
just so
name
they
is
can-
Janice Lixie. I live in the same height that he does, and I'm here for that reason too.
Your address, please?
5399 Spicer Heights. There was a lady that came over a few days ago and wanted to know if I was selling pigs. It was the 3 doors down that was selling pigs. I can smell it. They were running all over the neighborhood. I called the cops. The cops said they are allowed to have them. They said 10 acres. We've only got about a fourth. So this is where I'm at too.
Okay,
And
same,
he seems to be able to do anything. He's able, he gets out, I don't know how he does it. So, but I wanted one too a couple years ago and they told me I couldn't. So why, I'm just saying, why could he? And he's got roosters and pigs, and you can hear him every morning, and I can't believe that he's selling them too, so, but that's what I'm here for too.
okay. We appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and our attorney will continue to pursue that issue. Continuing on the left here, anyone else that would like to address the board? How about on my right-hand side of the room? Anyone that would like to address the board? How about in the back of the room? Good evening, Mr.
Good evening. I'm going to speak tonight, but Eddard, 7212 Porter Road. I just want to really thank the board for the good leadership you've been giving this community, addressing many issues, okay, that are before you, and, diversifying this township, and, addressing all the important issues, the unfunded liabilities and things like that. I think you're doing a great job in taking care of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Any other comments? Okay, we're going to go on to our agenda items, and the first item is approval of the treasurer's report. Mr. Guzak, anything that you'd like to mention on your report, since we're opening up the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Because you don't have consent on on those items in the consent agenda, would you consider moving those down into your operational issues, but after the action that you're going to propose, that's proposed for ring screw and also the Green Valley resolution?
I applaud that suggestion, and I would go along with it if the rest of our board would accept that.
Good idea. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Laddie. We will go directly to our public hearing then, and at this time, we are going to hear from, I believe, Ms. Salvati, our assessing director.
Yes, tonight we have an application for an industrial facilities tax exemption. I put the township's guidelines in your packet. This is a very small addition, it's only 2,500 square feet, but, so they qualify for 1-year exemption based on the cost, and then they qualify for 2 more years because it's a manufacturing industry. I'm going to let James Deere come up and speak to you about what Ring Screw does, what product they produce before. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jim O'Day.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Appreciate your time tonight. I'm the plant manager of our facility at 4146 East Baldwin Road. I have been with the company for 15 years. I've been their plant manager for 7 years. We've been blessed with tremendous growth. This is our 32nd year in the township. Our facility was opened in 1985 under Ring Screw Works. We've been very blessed to have the growth of being an automotive supplier, and our current annual revenue out of that facility is $78 million a year. Recently, our owners invested in an expansion so that we can put a inline heat treat furnace into our facility, which is continuing our capital investment in our plan. We currently employ 151 people in the facility, and so we're here today, and Nancy is our project manager, asking for the tax abatement and consideration from the board tonight. So any questions related to the detail, the overall investment? It's approximately over $600,000, I do believe, Nancy. James Franklin is here from the county. So we just would greatly consider the thought and the support from the board on that. Any questions or that Nancy and I may be able to answer?
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have one question. Did you mention you were installing a heat treating furnace?
It's a parts washer, inline parts washer, so it's an addition to our current heat treat furnaces.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
It's inline part wash.
Yes, yes, sir.
So does that increase your capacity?
It does not, sir, increase the capacity, but it improves our quality and our capabilities. And our Italian owners that purchased us 3 years ago want us to improve our current capabilities. So it's not really a capacity increase per se, but it gives us a little more competitive advantage for the quality of product that we make.
How many shifts do you have there?
3 shifts. We run around the clock, 24/7 for our heat treat furnace department.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from our board? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Ms. Salvati?
I just want to let you know that if you approve this, this saves this company about $20,000 over that 3-year period. So that's all I wanted to let you know.
Well, I appreciate them having their business here in Grand Blanc and want to do everything to see them.
One of 3 businesses.
Okay. I'm glad all 3 are here in Grand Blanc
Great.
Township, and we hope to get even more and help them be even more successful. So thank you for your work here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for your expansion. That's great news.
Mr. Kent?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also remind the public that when we hear our assessor talk about savings to the company, that's an increase of $20,000 to Grand Blanc Township that we wouldn't have had they not made the expansion. So it's a win-win for everybody. We're gaining 20, they're saving 20.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay?
Okay. I think we need a motion at this point. Or is this a, yes?
No, we need to hold the public hearing first.
Open the
Okay.
Take comment, close that, and then you can take action.
Okay. We'll open turn it over to the public now, if there's anybody in the public that would like to comment on this. Any public comment? Yes, sir. This is him. Mr. Franklin?
Yes, James Franklin from the Flint Genesee Chamber of Commerce. I'm the Business Development Manager, and we appreciate the Township Board supporting this retention of this work here in Genesee County and supporting this company. So we thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else that wishes to comment? Okay, seeing no other comment, we'll bring it back up here to the board. Mr. Laddie?
Well, close the public
And
hearing.
close public comment?
And then you've got a resolution
Okay.
for your discussion.
Everyone has a copy of the resolution?
Yeah,
Is there
so-
any questions?
Chairman Bennett, I would like to make a motion to grant the application for Ring Screw for a 3-year industrial facilities tax exemption certificate on their new construction.
Support.
Okay, there's a motion support,
Yes.
and it's a roll call. So, Ms. Lane?
Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr.
Okay.
Thomas is absent.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thank you again for your support of our township, and,
Thank you very much. We
Okay.
appreciate it, and our families appreciate it.
okay, ours too.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move to our second public hearing, which the board will hear public comment on the creation of a special assessment district proposed for the Green Valley subdivision street repair project to be financed for 5 years and associated cost allocated equally to all affected properties. And I'm not sure who would like to go first, but Mr. Laddie, do you?
Well, I'm happy to. Tonight is the first public hearing in the steps toward creating a special assessment district where the township will act as the financing arm for road commission work that will resurface the streets that are proposed in the district. We received a petition from interested property owners asking you to create the special assessment district for the subdivision, and we received, I think, was it 54%? 55% were in favor of the township considering the establishment of this district. And tonight you have an estimate from the Genesee County Road Commission as to the cost of the proposed repairs. And what we're going to do tonight is we want to hear comment from residents for or against as to whether or not we should create this district, and again, act as a financing arm for the resurfacing of these streets. And when I say the financing arm, these aren't our roads, they're road commission roads. The work that can be done to them will be done under the supervision of the road commission and with contractors that will be bid by the road commission. And we are just merely offering to borrow the money on your behalf and then collect it over a 5-year period on your winter tax bill in 5 annual installments. And so, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we have anybody here from the road commission or not, but we have the petitions, we have the estimate of the cost of the project, which I think is $370,000, not including administrative costs or interest. And if you are so inclined, perhaps you'll open the public hearing to take comment on whether we should create the district.
Okay, I'm so inclined, so let's open it for public comment. And we'll start here on the left side of my room. Mr. Russian, if you could give your name and address again, and
Pardon?
give your name and address again for the record, video.
Sorry, 85 years old, I'll get you. But, George Russian, 2441 Valley Lane Drive. I got from Genesee County Road Commission, where there is a, well, I don't know, petition, whatever, that if the supervisor signs it and the township board approves it, and then it will take 3 days to do the job, and the cost would be $153,161.67. So that is, the 3 inches is what proposal 2 is. They're going to put 3 inches, it's the same amount, you're going to basically have the same road. But what I'm looking at, the miscellaneous is going to cost us $216,838.33. So if they just put in the road, because everybody cuts their grass, they keep the drain ditches plowed and everything else, and in the spring, the county brings in technicians to go through it, and they mark the towels, and they mark this, and they mark that, to see if there's anything that has to be done. So I figured if anything has to be done, they would write a work order and send it in, and then I'd schedule the work. So the way I look at it, as far as the drain system and the storms and everything, there's nothing wrong with it, because they just check them like I said, every spring. So
Well, before we get too far into this, before we get in too far into this, Mr. Russian, I just want to mention that we have discussed this with the road commission, And they may have originally at one time said there was 3 options.
Yes, there was.
There is no longer 3 options. They are presenting 2 options, and we have our choice of those 2. That number 3 option that you're mentioning is off the table.
Number 3 is off the table?
Yes,
So I'm
that isn't
wasting
a
my time.
consideration.
Because
They will
like I
not
s-
do that.
I hope you see where I was coming from, but
Yeah.
why is number 3 off the table?
Well, in a number of subdivisions, the streets get to the condition, I mean, at one time, there might have been a cheaper fix, but as time goes on, the roads deteriorate further and options disappear. So at one time, let's say a subdivision might have been able to do a thin over, top layer, and as the road deteriorates, that becomes impossible to be able to do a thin layer, and you have to do a deeper, resurfacing. And that's probably, I'm not an engineer, but I'm assuming that's what the situation was with yours. But they have told us unequivocally that option 3 is off the table.
Well, could I speak some more?
Sure, go ahead.
Petition 2 is, they're going to, Green Valley subdivision with 3 inches of HMA resurfacing, driveway asphalt resurfacing. Petition 3 of the roads with 3 inches of HAM resurfacing. So from what I gather, what they're putting on number 2, they would be doing number 3 the same way.
Yeah. I don't know, there's something different about 2 and 3, though. They've told us.
I don't know what the difference is. Well, the only difference I know is the
$200,000.
miscellaneous work.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lehman?
Drainage reconstruction. They don't want to do the work because it will deteriorate quicker. They do have some drainage reconstruction in option number 2.
Okay.
Because like I said, the only difference I see is
Yeah.
the same amount, and
Right.
it's the miscellaneous, and miscellaneous is going to run, and it's only $382,000 to do number 2, but yet number 3 is $165, and between the 2 of them is, and
Yeah.
the way I look at it, 3 inches on a road. You're going to skim it off or whatever and lay 3 inches.
Well, tonight, we're just debating whether we are going to go forward with option 2 or not. It doesn't matter which option, we're not deciding which option. We're deciding tonight whether or not we're going with option 2, or if you're welcome to try and, persuade people not to pave the streets. But the only thing we're gonna decide tonight is whether to move forward with option 2 or to not do it at all. We're not changing, we can't change tonight which option we're going with.
Because I was hoping if you'd sign this, that it could go to
I know
option 3. And we need the road. I'm going to go around and take up a petition not to delay it. We need the roads bad.
Right.
And like I said, everybody takes care of the drains and so forth. I hope I'm getting across how the county is trying to take care of our subdivision, take care of
Yeah.
storm drains and so forth and so on. But yet they come in here with,
I wish there were more options, but tonight, the only thing we're gonna decide on is whether we do option 2 or we don't do them at all. And
I see.
we're hoping to hear from your other neighbors to find out, from them if they want us to move forward or not. If the majority has signed the petition, want to move forward, then we're going to move forward, I would assume. I can't speak for my fellow board members, but.
because, they got truss removal, trees and truss removal, $5,000. And like I said, everybody keeps the storm clearing. There's no problem. 2 or 3 years ago, we had one bad pipe across Green Valley, where Valley Lane, and they come in, they tore the road up, and they put a new pipe in.
Yeah.
So that was taken care of. So where they're coming up with so much maintenance traffic, slope restoration, and that's been in for years, I mean.
I don't mean to cut you off, but our time, we got 3 minutes per speaker, and we're past
Mr.
that
Laddie gave me a
already.
little more than that.
But we appreciate
3
your
hours.
comments and your concern, and we'll find out where your fellow neighbors are on this issue as well.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I was hoping that maybe signing this petition, that could move this forward and see what people
Yeah.
thought about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not at that point. We're considering option 2 tonight, or to take it off the table completely.
I see.
All right? Thank you, Mr. Russian.
Mr. Laddie serves good coffee.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. He does great work for us. Okay, anybody else here on the left that would like to address this issue? Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
I'm Mary Bedford. I live at 7281 Green Valley Drive in good old Grand Blanc Township. Thank you for hearing me again. I know that we have a lot of our neighbors here. We've gone through a lot since April. I'd like to personally thank the 5 people that initially started with this back in April. And with things happening the way that they happened, elections, et cetera, here we are. We started out with 1 petition now, and then we ended up with 3. And now, of course, number 3 is off the table, for which I have to say I am glad, and remind Mr. Russian that he did in fact sign number 2 as well when we had our first meeting. I'm here strictly as a community person. That is our neighborhood. We have a turnover going on in our neighborhood of the elderly people. I include myself in that, and the young families coming in. We have kids riding bikes. We have elders riding bikes. We have children. We have children that are on motor scooters. We are in a dangerous situation. The culverts, or whatever you call them, they are not all operational. There are some where the bricks have collapsed. Our driveways have heaved. There's a lot of issues with the water problem. So I'm here just basically speaking as a resident of a wonderful little neighborhood that not too many people are aware of. It's a mature neighborhood with wonderful trees. We have a great neighborhood base. Our first choice, of course, was option 1, which we had the doors slammed in our face several times as we went around, and we finally opted to get everyone to sign this, hopefully this number 2 that you're going to sign into motion tonight. I'd like to thank all my neighbors for their patience, because we visited some houses 5 and 6 times, and I'm sure they got tired of seeing us, you know, being vacuum salesmen. We weren't. So all I can say is I hope that this will go through and that our neighbors will look at this as a community project. We are neighbors, and that's what it's about. We have to take care of our roads, our property values. Yes, we've had some houses sell in there that have sold. The market in general is going up, but it's my understanding that when a house is for sale, that the potential owners are also made aware that there is something on the board about the roads. So I'm sure that had something to do with some of the homes that have been sold, because I know that there are people on the board that have been back there that know how bad they are. So again, I'd like to say thank you for considering this, and I'd like to see it pass through. I know the majority of the neighbors that are here all signed, a lot of them signed originally number 1, but came down to number 2 so that we could have something. And again, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else over on the left-hand side of the room that would like to speak? Okay. How about over here on my right side? Yes, ma'am.
Diana Law, 2461 Valley Lane. I just have some questions about how the voting happened, and no disrespect to anybody that came around. But the first thing is, I know you said there was 3.
3 proposals?
Right, and so now there's 2. There's not 3. How come we don't vote again?
It wasn't a matter of voting on any of them. There were 3 different petitions, I believe, for 3 different possible
Right,
paving
but if the
projects.
3rd one was taken off, and let's say I voted for the 3rd one, shouldn't I get the choice to vote for something else?
It wasn't necessarily a vote. It was whether or not you signed on. And what the petitioners were looking for is they needed to get 51% of the residents to sign on.
So
And then the
nobody
board-
voted for the 3rd one?
Well, it's not a vote, it's a petition.
Nobody signed for the 3rd one?
I couldn't tell you how many people signed the 3rd.
That's what I'm wondering.
Ms. Lane?
Initially, when I came on board, we ended up, there were rumors around about what was going on, so we found all 3 options. The first was a total redo, the second one is a repair, and the 3rd one was basically putting a Band-Aid on it. The first option, which was a total redo, there was 35% of the property owners signed that petition. 55% signed for option 2, and only 12% signed for option 3. You could sign all 3 if you wanted to. A few people signed 2 and 3, but only a couple of people signed for number 3.
You could sign for more than one option?
Yes, so that you could have a choice of what you preferred to do. and it was the option that would get the most people to sign for it. Did you ever get a copy of the 3 options?
When I was going to sign, there wasn't options for me to look at. She did tell me which ones there were available.
Okay.
You know, excuse me, I grew up and I was born and raised in Flint, and we never paid for roads, so this is new to me.
Okay.
But it just seemed odd that you could vote for more than one. And it seems like if, let's say there was someone that, and I didn't vote no on anything, but it seems like if I voted no, I feel like I should have got to vote no 3 times.
Yeah. It's not really a vote. But
Okay.
Mr. Buzak?
It's a preference.
No, I didn't have
Oh, I thought you had your hand
I know it's not a vote, but it just seems odd that people can sign for more than one option. And so then if you sign for one option and that didn't work, you can say, well, hey, do you want to take this option
Well,
instead?
I guess I would picture it more, and this is more just hearing what people have to say than to answer everybody's question, I think, but the.
Okay, I guess what I hear to say
the-
is I didn't really like the way it was done then.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Any other comments? How about the back of the room? Good evening.
Hi. My name is Sarah Marshall. My address is 2517 East Grand Blanc Road.
Okay.
Couple, I guess, questions I have, maybe comments. We just purchased our house in June. First off, we were not made aware that there was something going on when we purchased the home, as far as the road commission. We also struggle with the fact, on a personal note, that it's not even our address, and we're having to participate and pay for this, because the previous owner chose to put an extension in the driveway out the back of the house. My address is on Grand Blanc Road. My first initial driveway that was built with the house is off the front. When the old owner put the side drive in, I have no idea. But I don't mind helping the situation, but I do struggle with having to fully participate when my address is not even there. Not only that, I'm going to fix the road that comes off the side of my house when I have this nice walking trail in front of my house that floods every single time it rains that no one is fixing, which I didn't put in and wasn't a part of. And I've been told that that will not be fixed. I did not sign any of the petitions. I did talk to people a few times. Like I said, we were new homeowners, trying to obviously figure out how to live in a home and purchase a home and pay for bills versus doing a road, issue. I think that there should be some difference because our address is not on that road. We also were not informed that we could sign any of the petitions or all of the petitions. It was, and maybe I didn't ask the right questions, but it was sign one and that was it. I think it is a little bit unfair as to how it was because it was not explicitly said that you could sign all 3. So you have, half of the community signing 3 petitions, the other half signing 1. Of course, we're not going to get anywhere with option 3 because there's not enough people signing all of them.
Actually, the reason why they went with 3, didn't go with 3, isn't because we didn't get enough signatures. It's because the road commission said that it's not possible to do number 3, I believe.
Which is fine. I mean, I get it. There is, whatever the fix is. But I don't think it was put forth in the right manner that you had the option to pick as many options as you want. So you have half of the community choosing 2 or 3 options, half the community picking 1 because they didn't realize that they were allowed to choose more than 1. I do think a little bit more clarity in where the estimates are coming from. Is the road commission just making up this estimate based on jobs they've done in the past? Are they actually getting bids from companies that are real legit bids? $370,000 is, I do a lot of bidding on contracts myself for the job that I have, and I'd like to know where all that's coming from, what specifically it's coming from if I'm going to have to participate in that. That's pretty much all I have.
Thank you. Was there an informational meeting held?
Yes. We had an informational meeting, and maybe it occurred before you moved into your house, because there had been a start of petitions before I came here in November, and we wanted to lay out all the information. So we had an informational meeting, and we made up packets with all the options. The options with the cost were based on what the Genesee County Road Commission engineers' estimate would be to do the work when they did a general review of your roads, and then said, based on current estimates for work being done, this is what we estimate it would cost. So we put all three options together. We had a meeting at the police department so that everybody could see all three options. The road commission, our DPW was there, and myself, and it was explained, and then enough packets were given out to the ladies that took it around so that every resident in the district could have the same information. Does that answer enough of your questions? Okay.
And, I mean, we're looking at how we can improve our process too, so everybody's input is very helpful and well taken, so.
Excuse me, being the county owns the roads, they're gonna pay for it, aren't they? That's what it's their road, they signed a deed to the road, they own the road, they're gonna pay for it.
We're gonna make you our lobbyist for getting that done, okay? I'm not sure the coffee's free over there either, so.
Anyway, you spike that cup.
Okay.
You only get one cup.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this issue?
I'd like to comment.
Okay.
My name is Raymond Girding.
Here.
And I live at 7321 Green Valley Drive. I currently have I do not have a blacktop driveway. I have a cement, and I would like it replaced with cement, since there's nothing wrong with the culvert. It was just replaced back in 1997. I don't know if that's possible or not.
We can ask the
That'll
road
be on the
commission that.
minutes.
I mean, are they gonna, when they do the ditches, are they gonna do all the ditches? Or are they gonna skip the ones that don't need to be done, that have proper drainage already?
I'm sorry, we don't have anyone here from the road commission to answer those questions, but I can ask them in the morning.
And as we move forward, we'll have meetings with the road commission, and we can make.
And you said that was gonna take place on the 9th of November? Oh, that's the fire department, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, there'll be subsequent meetings as we move forward, if we vote in favor to move forward with the road commission, and we can ask them those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Good evening.
Hi, I'm Kathy Girding, 7321 Green Valley Drive. One of my questions is, I thought that when this goes through, this was going to be a monthly. Then I heard tonight, if I'm correct, it's going to be a one-year bill on our winter assessment. Is that right? Or is it going to be broken up over?
What do you mean monthly?
Like, okay, for instance, my home, my insurance, mortgage, everything is in one payment with my taxes. Is this going to be monthly, or is it one time a year we have to pay a bill every year for 5 years?
Mr. Guzak?
Yes, it's on your tax bill, it'll be one time a year. But once it's in place, you can come into the township and make any payment that you want on it. So once it's been established, if you wanted to come in and make monthly payments against the total bill for the year, you could do that.
So we can set up a payment plan, because I can't come up with $1,000 at one time.
Right, but you have to wait for it to come onto the bill.
Right.
Because you can't accept it until it's on the actual tax bill.
Yeah, I don't have the luxury that some people have. You know, we just don't have that. There's a lot of people here that doesn't have that.
Right.
Is there a penalty then?
Yeah.
Is there a penalty?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Is there a penalty for doing that?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Leamet or Mr. Laddie, if she has a mortgage and it's being collected through an escrow, they'll just increase her escrow account to cover that special assessment. Isn't that true?
That's my experience with that.
So it'll be a monthly. It'll be a
So it'll
monthly.
just be added on to our
Yes.
mortgage payment monthly.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring that.
Then you have to pay it once a year.
You can bring that up with your escrow company to
Right.
ask them to adjust the escrow to make up for the increase in the taxable amount.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I think somebody back there asked if they didn't have a mortgage company. Like I said, if you don't have a mortgage company, once it's been established, if you want to make monthly payments, let's say the amount is, let's say, $1,000 a year or $800 a year, you can come in and make monthly payments against it once it's been established So at the end of the year, that balance wouldn't be the full amount, it'd be reduced.
Do you get a penalty though?
There's no penalty to do that, no. And at any time, anyone, if they end up with a windfall or something, they could pay this off at any time also. That's another option that we have when we're collecting this.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Jeff Millwood, 7252 Green Valley. I'd just like to thank these two beautiful ladies for doing a good job. I thought it was very well explained. I attended the meetings. Mary went above and beyond to explain, and she took her time doing it. So I don't know where this gentleman lives, but when I look out my front door, my drain doesn't drain, the roads are falling apart, the driveways are cracking, culverts are breaking, so we have to do something. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? With that, I believe we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back up here to the board for discussion. Mr. Laddie, anything you'd like to add?
No, you have the, and again, one person actually made a comment about whether or not, will we learn more, I guess, about the details of the bidding process and the like as the project moves on, if you choose to move forward. Currently, what you have in front of you is the road commission's best estimate of what the potential costs are. And if we move ahead with the project, they will begin the process of formally bidding the project. They'll take the lowest responsible bidder and try to save money where they can. Simultaneously, our treasurer's office will begin the process of trying to arrange for financing. And then there will be another public hearing where we will hear, unfortunately, it will still be based on estimates, but we'll hear the per lot breakdown. We may have some additional information from the road commission at that time to share with the folks, but you'll all be invited again. So tonight, you'll just be deciding whether or not you want to adopt the resolution that creates the district and gets the project moving.
Ms. Lane?
This project, with all that goes on with the engineers drawing up the actual construction drawings, will be going on through the winter with the Genesee County Road Commission. And we're hoping, if everything goes smoothly, that this could be something that would be done in your neighborhood next summer or spring.
Well, as they prepare those and you choose someone to do the job, will the details of the job be made available for everyone?
Yes. Keep posted for the subsequent, if we vote to move in favor of it, there'll be subsequent public hearings where you'll have people from the road commission available to ask any and all of those questions, including regarding the culverts and what have you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
There is a sheet over there on the table for anybody that's here regarding Green Valley's Special Assessment District. If you leave your name and you print your email clearly enough, you can contact me, and emails are working very well between Mary and Linda and I to keep everything up to date. So if you want to have more attention or have questions, please leave your name and your email addresses so that we can keep you informed easier.
Mary, you had a question?
Yes, one other question. Will you do a mail out about the next public hearing, or will it strictly be in the paper? Because I don't want it to be said that people were not notified.
No, public hearings require my office to send out the notice, and it will be similar to what you received. And when we get an envelope back, I got one envelope back, the people have moved, and we were able to locate those people and give them the information.
So notices were sent out for this in the mail?
Yes,
I didn't even
to
receive
the
that. I found
current.
it in the paper.
All right, possibly when we did the mailing, you may not have had the information changed with our tax department.
And Ms. Lane, maybe we should verify that she's on the list, since her address is actually on Grand Blanc Road. I don't know if Mr. Laddie has it
Well,
down
No,
there, maybe.
she is.
Is she on there? Okay. Okay.
2517 East Grand Blanc Road. Ms. Marshall?
Okay. I'd like to thank also, the individuals that took the time to to research this issue and to move, you know, the petition around. I know those of you that have lived in cities, you know, as mentioned, you know, if you lived in a city, you didn't have to do this, but the road funding is such that cities actually receive the funding to maintain and pave the roads. Townships, that money goes to the county. And so if we're going to pave a road, the money has to come from one of two sources. One is either the county, or two, from a special assessment district like your neighbors have proposed here. The township is simply the financing arm. What we're going to vote on tonight is whether or not we move forward with seeking financing and allowing the county to move forward with their bids. Am I summarizing that correctly, Mr. Laddie?
You are.
So, I don't know if the board has any comment, but we'll bring it up here to the board to discuss the issue further. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, has this project reached the stage where there's a timetable for completion of the project?
Well, right now, we're just voting whether or not to let the county know. They've already done some engineering, but we're going to vote to move forward whether to move forward or not with letting the county know to go to the next step of engineering and seeking bids. So if they would like to have the work done next year, I would say, yeah, there probably is a timeline that we're on that we need to let the county know so that if they want to have it done next summer, we're probably on a pretty tight time schedule in terms of letting the county know. So, Mr. Kent?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Laddie, do we know enough when the second hearing will be?
Well, we are able to schedule that relatively quickly, considering we already have the estimate from the road commission. I think what we'd want to do is contact them, let them know the results of this hearing, let them know some of the questions that were asked, see if we can provide those answers to those questions, and we could set up the second hearing, I would think. I don't know if we want to do it in December of this year, or if we'd rather wait until January, knowing though that our goal is to get on the 2018 construction schedule.
Yes.
And so, in an ideal situation, we'd like the road commission to begin their engineering. We'll begin preparation of the public hearing, the second public hearing notice, where we'll confirm the role. Mr. Guzak may want to jump in here, I don't think we want to have our second public hearing. We do not want this assessment to fall on this year's taxes. We want it to fall next year. We want construction next year, then we want the first bill to come in December of 18.
Right.
And so we've got to coordinate that a little bit. So I'm thinking either December or January, we'll want to have our second hearing. Tell the road commission at that point, full green light, get us on the schedule, get it bid, and let's do it.
What I was trying to do is possibly let the folks know they can write it on their calendar for one of those. I mean, are we ready to set that date, or we're not?
I don't think we're ready to set the date because we do need some feedback from the road commission.
So that's, okay, then the best we can do is to let you know that it'd be either December or January, most likely.
And we'll be getting out letters like we did before. We'll be running it in the paper. I've actually never heard somebody say, I didn't get the letter, but I saw it in the paper. I'm glad to hear you say that. But we'll be doing that same process again and letting everybody know well in advance.
Will those 2 months, though, set us back off the summer schedule? I mean, I know we're not the only subdivision asking for roads.
I don't think that will be the case, but that'll be one of the questions we want to check with the road commission. The fastest we could do this would probably be your December series of meetings. But again, I don't want to cause the assessment to begin in the year that we haven't had the project done. And so that'll be the difference between a December meeting and a January meeting, in my opinion.
December 14th would be our Thursday meeting.
That's circle that in pencil, but again, watch your mail because it'll be coming.
Okay. Any other board discussion on this issue? Okay, I think I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one.
Mr. Chair, I would move that the board consider approving the resolution authorizing the Special Assessment District for resurfacing and road repair of Green Valley subdivision.
Support.
Okay, it's been a motion supported. Any further discussion? Again, thank you to the residents that initiated this. Our home values and the entire township we live here because I think we hold high standards and we want to keep those standards, and we appreciate everything that people do to maintain that, so. Okay, what's that?
We gotta take the
Yeah.
vote.
Yes.
All those in favor?
No,
that's
it's
a
a
roll
roll call. It's a
Okay.
resolution, Mr. Chair. Mr.
Go ahead.
Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas is absent.
Okay, so we'll move forward to the next stage. Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate everyone's participation in the public hearing. With that, we'll move to the approval of the treasurer's report.
So
Scott?
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Well, if you follow the agenda down, the consent agenda can then just be the
Add
last
on
three
to the
items
end.
under operational, we'll do them in order. So that would give you the opportunity to follow.
So just add them on to the end of the operational. Okay. We'll give it a couple minutes for the room to clear out. We'll give the room a couple minutes to clear out, and then we'll resume.
Okay.
Yes?
Oh, the road commission took it off because it was such a minimal, it wouldn't have lasted very long. And what happened was, when I came in November of 2016, there were rumors, okay, right, there were the Genesee County Road Commission who owns, right, they own the roads. They own the roads, okay?
That's what the gavel.
Okay, we're
They-
going to
No,
resume
we're
our
gonna-
meeting.
we're gonna
We have
conduct our business.
quite a bit of business to take care of, so
Yeah, no, we got a ways to go.
They will have the engineer do.
Another
the
2 hours
engineering.
to go.
we're going to resume our meeting. If you'd like to use our lobby, we welcome you to, but we have other business to conduct. Thank you.
Chairman slammed that about a dozen times a night
Really?
because of rowdiness. And arguments among the neighbors and everything. Those are the neighbors.
Okay, we're going to move on to operational issues, and the first issue is the board will consider a resolution authorizing the special assessment district, which
We've already
we
done
did that, I guess.
We
So
did
the
number
board will
6C.
consider ring screw.
6C.
We're on
The board
C.
will review the proposed revisions to the Grand Blanc Township Fire Commission ordinance. First, I'd like to have Mr. Lima to talk a little bit about the spirit of this and the reason for even drafting this.
Thank you, Supervisor Bennett. I sent up to the board just a recap of the Fire Commission ordinance revisions. The board instructed Attorney Laddie and myself to work to go through the proposed language changes to the existing Fire Commission ordinance, and I thought it would just help provide some clarification and talk about the why behind how we got there. Number one, the previous adopted ordinance, we didn't make a lot of changes. We're really looking, if you look at the old ordinance and then the changes that you were provided with in the new ordinance, the makeup of the commission, again, is made up by statute. It's 2 members from the city, 2 members from the township, 1 at-large member. One of the points that we wanted to make, and were instructed to by the board, is to be sure that the provision for an at-large be a township resident. Now, that is not a part of the state statute, but is rather a request the township is making for more equal representation based upon the fact that the funding, the population, and the runs are roughly split at 86% township responsibility, 14% of the city. If we were, Act 57, for example, we were setting it up, if it was a 5-member board, I believe the township would be asking for 4 of those seats because it isn't specifically prescribed by statute. Now, with the fire commission that we have currently, it is prescribed that it's 2 and 2, but I did want to point out that there is a fairness factor, is that at-large position has to be approved by all 4 members. It goes before all 4 members. So the city does have the opportunity to weigh in equally with the township on that 5th board member's position. So it's 2 votes and 2 votes on the one they appoint. We thought it would be important to clarify that language in the ordinance. The next thing was to clarify the language in there in regards to permanent property improvements to both building and grounds for each municipality that they own. This came about because of the confusion that we have experienced recently in discussion about the kitchen project that was completed in Fire Station Number 1, and we thought that it was important to include the language in there on whose responsibility permanent repairs were. And there were some discussion earlier today in our executive council meeting about the what constitutes a permanent repair, and I think that's something that the board should consider if they like the language that's in the ordinance or if it needs to be further clarified. We also looked at the funding mechanism for operations and capital expenditures. We'd obviously like to see the 10-year voted millage to be set at 1 mil for both municipalities. And then we were instructed to look at a up to 0.5 mil additional coming out of the general fund. Currently, we're funded by 0.5 mil extra voted and an additional 0.5 mils that is contributed from each municipality's general fund. We believe that because there is a funding shortfall that is resulting in us not being able to set aside money for capital expenditures, that it's critical that we move to 1 mil extra voted request to the voters and then put it in there that it will be up to 0.5 mils from each respective municipality's general fund. The flexibility of the 0.5 mils, I think, works well because it is a compromise from both the city and the township. When we started this, the township had gone into it with the idea that 1.5 mils would be the required funding in order to achieve not only operations but capital expenditures so we could afford to buy equipment, trucks, moving forward for the next 10 years. The city was more hovering around that 1 mil, where we're currently at. So setting it up the way we did in the current language allows for 1 mil voted, so it's a guaranteed 1 mil, and the 0.5 contribution from our general funds. Maybe it will start off at 0.5 mils because we know we have to backfill because there is a shortfall in our capital funding account. But it will be adjusted every year. If you look at how we do our budgets now, each department prepares a budget for us and submits it. We look at it, we cut back if we don't agree, we add more if we think there's something missing that isn't achieving our goals, and then we present it back and the board makes a decision on it. We should treat the fire department the same as we do any other budget. We should adjust it annually. This would give a great compromise for both the city and the township to agree on what that funding level should be, and we can cut back from the 0.5 mils and utilize that general fund money for other expenditures, whether it's paying down unfunded liabilities, road repairs, or what have you. But we think that that is a great compromise and the language should exist in the ordinance. We also included the idea that we should have maintain a reserve balance of 15% of annual expenditures in the commission's general fund, as the board had discussed. One other question that I had put in there is for in the employment powers and duties for the township as the employing municipality, I would like to change the wording from shall to may seek the concurrence of the city and or the commission in employment matters. The reason I'm making that request is because as the employer, we carry the employment liability and we must be able to make the decisions that best protect us from legal action. If we have to rely, if we're solely the employer and we solely have the liability of the employment contract with our employees, I don't know that we should give up that we shall consult with them, because I think it puts us in a position where if they didn't agree and we can't make changes, we're the only ones left holding the liability. There is no liability. The benefit to the city, of course, is that they're insulated from being named as defendants in potential lawsuits brought against the employer. Finally, as requested, we have included language regarding dissolution should either municipality desire to repeal the ordinance and end the joint commission. The language allows for a mutually agreed upon mediator to determine assets and liabilities of the commission and fire department, as well as each party's benefits and obligations moving forward. This is designed to protect both municipalities' current and future interests in the operation of the joint fire department. Well, I'm sure I did not address every concern of every trustee or city council member. We did endeavor to find common ground where possible that will protect both municipalities' interests and offer us a path forward. We believe the spirit of compromise is evident if you look back to where we started this conversation on how to fund the future of fire operations. And I think that if we agree to annually work together to fund the department at a level that accomplishes both our operational and our capital needs without building excess fund balance, we're being responsive to all of our residents.
Very good, Mr. Lemon. Any comments? Mr. Ken?
Clarity, through you to Mr. Lemata. The liability insurance for employment, that's the townships covered under our carrier, correct?
So, yes, because we are the employer of record. So when we look at the insurance that we carry, we have to cover as employers if we were to be involved in a lawsuit, for example, that we took an illegal action or whatever against an employee, we'll be the ones who have to defend ourselves. It doesn't fall on the commission or the city.
That's where I was going with, I got a kind of an A and a B here to this question. Mr. Laddie, in the event that we should have to defend ourselves and we either up into the deductible or at a minimum, it's going to be the deductible amount. Do we have any provision for shared cost on that deductible?
Well, we don't have a specific provision for shared costs on the deductible. We do, though, have a inserted language that talks about a contribution for administrative costs for our employment responsibilities. And I want to see.
I read that.
Yeah, I think it's in the budget provisions. Let's see if I
That's a
can
very
find
good
it.
point, though, Mr.
Budget, fire department budget.
Yep.
A.
Section 5.
It's in section 5, sub A, and it says, it describes the general fund budget, which serves as a primary reporting vehicle, including authorized staffing levels, salaries, fringe benefits, contractual services, commodities, and employment administrative costs incurred by the township for payroll, benefits, human resources, et cetera. So what we want to do is make sure that we have a line item specifically in the budget each year that recognizes our administrative costs as the employer. And my position would be that if we had a year where we did have a claim for a deductible or litigation costs or arbitration costs relating to our employment duties, that would have a separate line item in the budget that would be shared by both the city and the township.
Okay, and with that, I'm not sure I want to make this happen, but within our liability premium, obviously they've considered the fact that we're covering this employment agreement and this operational agreement for the fire department, yet we're not billing anything back to the fire commission or to the city for that premium, correct?
We just started in 2017 billing the fire commission for administrative costs. And we have it again in 2018's budget. Prior to this year, we did not bill for any administrative costs.
Within that administrative cost, there's a proration or some formula that we come up with to cover that cost of our premium?
And the formula that we arrived at, and it's not an exact science.
I understand.
But the formula that we arrived at equals about 8% of the cost of our human resource administrator, who is our benefits coordinator, as well as my time that I spend on administrative functions for the fire department. So that is built into that cost.
Okay.
We don't specifically break out time versus, insurance premiums or.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, Chairman?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. In Article 10, Sections 2 and Sections 5, mention that amount of contribution shall be determined annually based on the proposed fire commission budget and approved by both municipalities. Then, this is the thing. If the city and the township do not agree, the fire commission shall determine the amount. So this sounds as though we're delegating responsibility for determining the final fire commission budget not to directly to this board.
Can I weigh in?
Sure.
We wanted to place a burden on the city council and township board to actually come to an agreement on the amount of at-large contribution. We wanted that to be the first responsibility of both bodies. In the event that we are not able to reach a compromise with them on an annual basis for the budget, then we are gonna place a lot of responsibility and wait on the fire commission as our secondary representatives, and they'll decide the amount. So if we don't sit down and bargain and come to an agreement, then we're gonna give up a certain amount of control. Now, it's gonna go to your, again, your appointed people, so it's not like we're throwing it to the wind, but that's a fair assessment of it.
So just so I get this, so if we were to approve this language, we're abdicating our responsibility to approve the budget for this commission, for this
Well, yeah.
operation.
Or if we fail at our responsibility to reach an agreement with the city and township, then
Semantics.
yes.
Yep.
You're correct.
I think we're open to suggestions other than that, but somehow if we are at loggerheads with the city in terms of agreeing on the budget.
Yeah, is there any other option that we can
Right.
pursue? Because I think he brings up a good point that, we want to work with the city, we want to, because we're better together. But if for some reason we can't, all of a sudden, they could come back through, and of course, it's limited by dollars. I mean, there's only so much dollars there.
Not true.
Well,
I don't read that.
It's limited up to the 0.5
0.5,
contribution from the general
but-
fund. So it would stay, if we started off at 1.5 mils, with a 1 mil voted and 0.5 mils contribution from the general fund, and we never came to terms for 10 years with the city, and they turn in a budget at 1.5 mils every year, and we can never agree to reduce it with the city, it's gonna remain at 1.5 mils for the entire 10-year millage run. I mean, I think
Yeah,
it's,
I don't think that's-
we're trying to find
Chair-
that fail-safe.
Sure. So let me just throw this out, recognizing that we're better together. But if we were to come up with an instance where we can't agree on a budget, then I would think that would signal that we've lost cooperation with the city and would trigger something about dissolution of this or something. That's just
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Lane?
Okay. Mr. Mansour, I could agree with you that if we come to a loggerhead, it makes it difficult, but this at least gives us another option before we have to say, we're going to jump ship. We don't want,
so
we
Ms.
don't
Lane,
want to take that, I mean.
right, I 100% agree with you, but I mean, I think that one of the things that I certainly was elected to do in this position is to exercise due diligence on the finances of and the spending of the township. And I guess I don't feel as though, again, not speaking toward the people on the commission, but just in terms of my responsibilities, I don't think I would be exercising those responsibilities in the way that I was elected if I was to just to push those off.
Understood.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree.
Right.
I agree with you.
But we're not pushing it.
Yeah,
We're
we
having
are.
every opportunity to try and negotiate. It's just if we can't,
I think what Mr. Mansour is saying is we're abdicating our responsibility
Right.
if we don't come to an agreement. And you know what, we've kind of been operating under that scenario up until now.
This
because-
codifies it, though.
No, I'm saying we've
So I
been
think we should take
operating
it out.
as you would like, because we
Right.
don't have the commission as the
Right.
deciding factor.
Yeah,
So,
yes.
right now, if we couldn't come, let's say that last year we couldn't come to an agreement on the budget, we could have said, hey, you know what, this isn't working, and we're gonna have to go our own ways. I mean, that could have been the scenario any given year over the past 7 years, because if we say, hey, we're not gonna fund this, then the thing goes away, right? And that could continue even if without this language in here. If we can't agree to a budget, then it does kick into motion, well, what are we gonna do? We're gonna either dissolve or we're gonna come to an agreement on our budget, because our funding for the fire department and the city's funding is a voluntary funding. It's not mandatory that we turn that money over to the fire commission. So if we disagree with what the commission comes up with the budget, we can always say, you know what, we're not gonna fund that. And so that is our vote. You know, this language puts another party into that mix. The fire commission helps decide that, but,
So,
I understand what you're saying.
so Chairman Bennett, I'm just wondering if there's any other, approach that we could take to this, that, you know, if we come to loggerheads, maybe we just carry over the previous year's budget and proceed forward with some kind of dissolving of the situation. I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. So, Mr. Laddie, right now, if we couldn't come to an agreement on the budget, it would continue at the one, well,
The 1 mil you can't stop.
we would be in determination of that, I guess anyways, right? What we're gonna give.
The way you, if our old ordinance is still in place, and we still, by the way, we're collecting $500,000 from the residents, right?
Right.
For fire service. So that's gonna continue until 2019. So you've basically committed yourselves to provide fire service in whatever form that takes. But yeah, if you decided if we didn't amend this agreement, you decided to disband or dissolve your partnership with the city, then this would very much look like the process that you would go through whether this language exists or not. We would probably be ordered to follow this unwinding process while still trying to provide some level of fire service.
Yes, it'd be some kind of continuing coverage until we could find a more stable alternative.
So what would happen if we eliminated that last sentence of section 2?
Well, then you find yourselves in a situation a lot like you find yourselves today.
No, right.
Trying to annually negotiate over a period of months what the financing will be for the fire commission.
Does it remain, I guess it would remain the same, or we could determine that we're going to keep it the same, and
If it remains the same, I don't think you can provide the same level of service that you've been providing.
No, I'm saying that, let's say that we vote for the millage, and we're moving forward. 2 years from now, we're at a disagreement with the city on how we should fund it. Maybe we say we want 1.5 going into that, and they say we want 1.2, 1. I guess at that point, we can't agree, so guess what? We're going to trigger the dissolution clause. I guess that would be the option, which they would have even with the sentence in there, I would take. I mean,
You still have the dissolution clause.
Yes, Mr. Guzak?
I agree with Mr. Mansour that I think that should be stricken because it is our responsibility to make sure we're handling it properly, and that's why we're all elected. And if it comes to that, we'll work it out, but we shouldn't just throw it on to the fire commission and say, you have to take care of this. I think it was well taken, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Mr. Kent?
Through you to Mr. Laddie, in that last sentence, when it says if we do not agree with our partner, the fire commission shall determine the amount. So the fire department is like our arbitrator. They determine the amount, but if we decide we're still only gonna give so much money, that's just the way it is, right?
Well, if this is your own ordinance, I think if you have a deferral to the fire commission, I think you'd be hard pressed to.
So then I think the wording is maybe, I'm bothered by the wording then, because if we don't agree, and then we're just like Mr. Mansford, we're delegating responsibility for them then to determine the amount. Somebody that's not elected with that responsibility. Is there other words we could use that?
It's hard to come up with something here.
Yeah.
I say just eliminate it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey?
I think I may be missing something here. When you going forward, each year, we set a budget, okay? We come up with a budget. The budget is dictated on by expense, okay? So I don't see a problem occurring because if I understand you guys correctly, what you're really saying okay, if the expense, I'm just gonna throw out a number, okay? If the expense is $1 million, so who in their right mind will come back and say you need $800,000 budget? I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. So that's, it appears to me that is the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking the other way.
Me too.
We're thinking it should be $1 million, and they propose 1.1. That's the scenario I'm thinking.
But your expense will dictate to what your budget should be.
In an ideal world, I think that would be the case, Mr. Massey, but we're just thinking that, you know, I mean, we don't know who will be elected in the future and who will serve in some of these positions. I think right now, we're probably pretty confident of that, but down the road. Mr. Lemina?
The board is going through the same struggles that Mr. Laddie and I went through, going through the ordinance and trying to find a fail-safe if you can't agree. One of the things, just remember this, that when the budget comes to you, the Fire Commission did put the budget together. The budget that we get to approve has come from them, and it's if, you know, again, you're looking at something that they've already put together, and we either agree, as we have in the past, we work through it, and, you know, you guys remember last year when we approved the budget, there was a question about the capital expenditures, and that came up, and so we approved the operational budget, but not with the capital improvement plan that they had presented. Their 5-year capital plan was specifically rejected during that conversation. It was never really resolved. We just moved forward because we had approved the operational expenditures moving forward, or what was going to happen. You know, we're trying to avoid something like that, and you're right, the same struggles that David and I went through, you guys are going through, and it's like, well, how do we do it then? What's the fail-safe? Or there isn't one. I mean, there always is the option where we start the dissolution process if we can't come to terms. I would hope that we don't go through this battle every year for the next 10 years. If we really are, then I think we probably are at the point that we have to start the dissolution process anyways, because we clearly have two completely different visions about what it means to provide fire protection and prevention to our overall community.
So, excuse me, Chairman,
Yes,
Chairman
Mr.
Bennett, so I appreciate the comments from Trustee Massey. I get your point, and also Mr. Lemina, but it still doesn't change the verbiage in there that, you know, seems to me as though, you know, we deed over responsibility to someone. So, and it also appears, just because, you know, it also appears in Section 5, that the same verbiage.
Because we currently have a veto opportunity for somebody with our budget now. If the city or township rejects the budget, then we're at a stalemate. And so we carried that same tiebreaker over. If you don't like it there, you won't like it anywhere else.
So that, and I get that, and it's consistent. I appreciate that. But if we leave it out there, doesn't it then basically put the onus on both the township and the city under the light of you know, our residents' view and whatever, you know, was said about us in the media to come up to some kind of an agreement here? So I mean, it just seems to me that that's a backstop that we don't want to that we have to be cognizant of as well.
Mr. Massey?
I have a question for some of you trustees that have been around for a while. In the past, have you ever had a problem getting the fire commission budget through?
No. No. We've had, Mr. Chairman, we've had, where we've recommended some tweaks or some things that bothered us, small, but nothing big that I recall. And
We don't need the
and we've and they've accommodated.
Well, my question, the reason I asked that question, my next question is, what happened, let me say, if we reverse the language? In other words, well, I guess we're going back to where we were. And the more I think about it, the fire commission will create the budget, okay, and they send the budget to us. And then we finalize the budget.
It's okay.
Correct.
So it's already.
That still exists. There's still the opportunity for input from the city and township into the budget.
Yes.
Yes, that exists now, and it exists if you adopted this language too. But then ultimately, both municipalities would have to approve the budget.
Yes.
And then they would you know, have to make, step two would be for you to fund the proposed budget with the floating millage rate.
It's not really change, well, it is reversing the action, I like to say.
Yeah.
It's right?
It is. Well, you're exactly right, because it's gonna come to you from the fire commission.
Yes.
You're gonna maybe tweak it.
Yes.
You'll send it back, you'll get it back, you'll approve it, and then presumably the city and township will set the amount needed for the general fund contribution. And then if you didn't do that, it would circle its way right back to the fire commission.
So what, if we reversed it, the action, what you think about if we reversed the action? The budget comes from, the original budget comes from the fire commission, and then we approve the budget.
That is how it works.
Say what?
Well,
That is how it works.
That's how it works today.
That's how it works today. I mean, I think with Trustee Mansour's comments, I mean, if you eliminate the last sentence, and then all it says is that it's going to be approved by both municipalities, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And that gives us till December 31st to approve a budget, because on January 1st, we will have a unfunded fire commission, because they won't have a budget to operate on.
Right. And then we decide what we do in the meantime.
Right. Well, I guess I have another question now. Is that a good idea?
Well, we have that now. That's our current operation model.
Is
And
that
it's
a
been
good
working.
model?
It's been working so far.
It's been working.
I think it's better than this option.
Yep.
I think,
Well, there seems to be consensus
that
to
sounds
strike
like a
that.
consensus. I haven't heard from everybody. Ms. Lane, do you have any comment on it?
That's fine. I want to be more optimistic, and if there isn't cooperation, then we don't want to pull the plug, but if we have to, we have to for the good of the community.
Right.
We have to represent
Exactly.
36 square miles, you know, of area that needs service.
So it sounds like, just to summarize, we want to, I think we have consensus to eliminate that last sentence of section 2.
Okay,
And then also in section 5,
right,
to
same
eliminate
thing.
that last sentence that's highlighted.
I have one question,
One more.
Mr. Chair.
Um,
My question is, excuse me, there's not anything in there saying that the fire commission creates the budget, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's
Which
in there.
section is that?
The fire chief creates it and gets it approved by the
Which
fire
section
commission.
is it?
While you're looking at for that,
It's right in section 5, or I mean,
Six-
budget section.
That section 5 budget, the annual operating budget shall be prepared in accordance with Public Act 621, 1978. The fire chief shall prepare the proposed budget, which shall be submitted and reviewed by the fire commission, then forwarded to the city and township.
Right.
Mr. Mansour, you had
Yeah,
a third?
I just had one more comment. So in section 4, the same article, this was going back to this whole kitchen thing. You know, the wording there doesn't strike me as if it could have avoided this thing. I mean, because the kitchen, I don't know whether it was a repair or whether it was an upgrade, but is there something in there that we can use to, I guess, give a little more definition? Or, yeah, exactly.
Mr. Laddie?
Well, that's something that came up today at our meeting, and so we batted around the idea of what's the definition of a fixture, what's the definition of a repair to a structure or facility, and that comment was echoed this morning, and I think we do need to come up with a series, perhaps a combination of words that will describe a permanent improvement to one of the structures
Yeah.
of
If it's a part of the physical building itself, like the 4 walls and the roof, I think that's
It's
one way.
attached.
Yeah, but if it's like interior, the appliances and that kind of stuff, that's maybe for me a little different.
Yeah. And I think we all have an idea of what that looks like. It's
Yeah.
just trying to describe it. So I think we are going to have to spend a little more time trying to be precise on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Massey?
I have another question. Are we saying as a board that we can dismantle the fire joint venture at any time?
That's my position. You are engaged in a joint venture with another municipality, and you are essentially partners.
Yep.
And if you decide not to be partners, if one of you decides not to be a partner anymore, then the partnership needs to be dissolved. And the dissolution of that, it's not spelled out in Act 33. It is given some vague description in Act 57, but basically you would be dissolving your partnership.
But I'm just thinking aloud here. Based on my experience with those kind of activities, it becomes very, very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking aloud again that it's going to affect the millage some kind of way.
Well, it will affect either, it would currently affect you, and it would affect any future millage you make, because a millage is basically a promise that you're making to your residents, saying that we're going to dedicate X amount of your tax dollars for
Yes.
this particular service. And by the way, there's an implication that there's a level of service that you're providing as well. And so you have an obligation to those folks to provide that service. You can either contract for it, you could create your own fire department, there are a number of different ways to do it, but it would be very expensive, it would be difficult to implement and difficult to fund.
That's what I'm thinking.
Excuse me,
Okay, Mr. Mansour?
but the expense for that falls on the city as much as it would on the township.
Absolutely.
It certainly would, the process would fall to them as well.
Right.
And then both municipalities, both neighboring municipalities would be left with the obligation to provide some fire service.
So another question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So when you have a millage and the voters vote for a 10-year millage, so if you decide to no longer have a joint fire commission, and you decide to dismantle it, so you don't owe the voters anything?
No, we do. The millage is not tied to the fire commission, by the way. The millage is not tied to any joint operation of the city and township. The millage is just us saying to the voters, we want a $0.5 increase in tax so that we can provide you with fire service.
Yes.
It doesn't say how we're going to
Yes.
do that. And future language wouldn't say how we're going to do that. We have in the past chosen to pool our efforts, but we're not obligated to do that.
But I have one more question. Here's what I'm thinking, Superintendent and Attorney. So what happens if you get into a financial situation that you're trying to provide fire service for the residents, but because of the financial constraint that you are under, it's going to require extra revenues. So where do those extra revenues come from?
Well, and I'll let Dennis address this as well, but my experience will be that the level of service will follow the amount of revenue that you dedicate to it. You're not under a statutory obligation to provide fire service to your residents. You've chosen to do that. You are allowed to do that under statutes. As somebody pointed out, your true obligations are to collect taxes for the county. And then you've decided to provide fire service to your people, and you've set up a model for that. If you don't have funding in place for that, then you'll reduce the level of service to meet the amount of funding you do have. You also have the ability to create a township-wide special assessment district to fund it. You could join with other municipalities and join an authority. You could contract for your services. There are a lot of different ways you can do it. But to your main point, if you don't have enough money for it, your service is going to look a lot worse than it currently does.
Okay. So what are our thoughts with this ordinance? So we're going to forward this to, with these changes to the city, or Mr. Laddie, what do you suggest?
With your comments tonight, I mean, there's a pretty major shift in what we had proposed for the financing, so we'll have to make a change to that, which is easy to make. We have to come up with better language for you regarding the definition of the permanent improvements to the structures. I don't think anybody has any problem moving down the page here on page 5 with the requirement that there be a 15% reserve fund for annual expenditures.
That's fine.
I thought that was agreed with the city.
All right. And then There was a restructuring, I think, that Superintendent Limita, perhaps with our finance director, tried to get a little more precise with the funds, which kept the 5-year capital improvement program, but also eliminated the language that had to do with the internal service fund, and I'll let Mr. Limita address those changes.
One of the reasons why we would recommend eliminating that internal service fund is because if you read through their description as a financial mechanism for accumulating resources to operate, maintain, replace, which is what we really want to do with that capital projects fund. When I think this was initially put together, we thought that this was going to be, that internal service fund was going to be holding the capital projects fund balance for us to be able to do all these things, but it never turned out that way. And if you look at how they use their internal service fund, typically in government finance, that internal service fund might be used for joint operations or something specific like that. This has been used as a maintenance and repairs account for capital equipment, but it hasn't really been used for a capital projects fund. I think that if they want to keep the internal service fund, it doesn't need to be a separate fund that we're transferring money into and then paying maintenance out of it. Those are just general fund expenditures. I think it would be easier to make a maintenance account within the general fund and account for those. And then what we really want to see is that capital projects fund with a fund balance that gets built specifically for that. Once it's transferred in there, it can't be used for any other purpose unless they make a conscious decision and ask the township board and city council whether they can use that money for operations or something else that came up. And I think that's the key, is being able to put that money into the capital projects fund that cannot be reallocated or utilized for any other purpose other than to finance projects without a motion of the fire commission approval of the city and township. And that's kind of the key. Again, it's about having that we're trying to build capital fund here, putting it into internal service fund like it had initially been designed. You're buying gas, tires, oil, and that doesn't make any sense.
Ms. Lane?
I think that that's an easy agreement, because during our joint meetings, we all agreed to eliminate the internal fund. So it's not going to be something new to the city. And we said we would make it into a capital improvement project. And that's important to us because in the last 10 years, with all good intentions, we lost a staffing position because we hadn't planned properly for the 10 years. And that's why we are proposing the adjustment on that $500,000 so that we can stay current with whatever the economic conditions are.
And as you guys approve the budget annually, you're going to also be approving the amount of money that's being placed from that budget, from the revenue sources, into the capital projects fund. You'll also be looking at that capital projects balance, which I assume will be one of the driving factors for where you want to put that 0.5 mil, up to 0.5 mil general fund contribution, is really going to be driven by how much money do you have in the capital projects fund. Is it enough to fund what we have coming before us for the next several years? And so I think that's where the fail-safe mechanism is you're really going to be approving how much money is being allocated into that capital improvement program annually.
So I assume, are those changes okay with folks,
Yeah,
or are there any comments?
I agree.
Looks like we have consensus for that. Yes, Mr.
I
Massey?
have a change I'd like for us to consider. Under improvements to properties,
Which section is that, Mr. Massey?
Section 4, under Article 10, I think it's under Article 10, Section 4. Yes, Article 10, Section 4. I think we should have some notation there that both the city and township be responsible for repairs for properties and structures utilized by the fire commissioner for training.
And the best example of that
Yes.
is right out there.
Training tower.
So there's a
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kent?
as much as I like the idea, it flies in the face of township-owned versus city-owned property, doesn't it, Mr. Laddie?
well, it's a departure from what we had set up. Yes.
Right. So we can't. I mean, certainly, there is no really, Chief Burdette is not here, but there's no operational cost to that. I mean, it's strictly a repair and maintenance. I mean, we don't staff it, we don't have.
No, but you do probably pay the county for the water. I mean, there's, whatever water gets spent there, but
That'd be up,
that's probably not
yeah,
huge.
that'd be about the only variable cost there is to that.
How much was the repair we made to the tower in the past, Mr. Lehman?
$74,000.
How much, I'm sorry?
74,000.
74?
That was structural, that wasn't a,
That's still a repair.
It's a
Right.
joint, I mean, it benefits, I remember we spoke about who all trains on that, and I believe it's other fire departments as well.
You know, I gotta tell you, I was an advocate for them paying us some portion of that for many years now, but per this thing that this agreement that we're hammering out here tonight, I just don't think it's consistent with that. So now, I'm not saying I still don't like the idea of that we maintained and the fire department uses it, right? But I guess it's no different than Station 3 out on the south end or 2 up here, right? We're signing up to take care of those buildings, garage doors, light fixtures, roofs, and so this sets in our township. It's just, I got to tell you one more thing. We have many municipalities that use that building, and they don't pay a dime.
So,
Mr. Mansour?
sorry to drag this out, but further to your point, Trustee Kent, is there an opportunity for us to set up some small kind of fee?
I've asked that in the past, but it didn't
Especially
go
for
over real big.
non-Grand Blanc, well, anyway, it's okay.
I'm willing to discuss it, but
Mr. Lehman asked.
Well, so Mr. Massey's proposed an idea, and we've heard a counterpoint from Mr. Kent. Where do the rest of you fall on the idea of making a distinction between a training structure versus another operational structure?
I would have no problem with establishing a fee for other municipalities using it, just like I know our police department pays for gun ranges in another municipality. As long as it's within reason.
Sure.
But that would be something that because we're the owner, right? And if
We can do it, right.
If we stood by the idea that we're gonna own our own structures,
And
then
that,
you would be insured, you would be able to charge a fee if you wanna charge a fee.
right,
wouldn't
and
have
that
anything to do with this
fee would,
contract.
and again, for clarification, because we sometimes have this misunderstanding, if we're going to maintain it, that fee doesn't go to the fire commission, it stays within the township's
Right.
funding.
Absolutely.
Mr. Guzak?
And that's true, but that isn't part of this contract, right? Because that's something we can do as the owner, so if we just take that out, we don't have to worry about that at this point.
Mr. Kent?
I'm gonna throw just a word of caution, okay? Having been in not as long as these firefighters and the respectful people that we have here fighting fires, but as a administrator and budget developer back in the day, we gotta be careful here. Mutual aid, as I'm talking myself right into this comment right here, okay? But mutual aid, we get, be very careful when we start talking about charging. We may have to roll Burton in here one day with something in our north end or from the west side of us or something like that from Mundy Township. We don't bill each other for mutual aid. That's a can of worms I'm not sure I want to open.
We paid a rent for shooting, and that has to be
I want to
done
know
all
the
the
details on
time
that.
around.
I'd like to know some details on that, but.
Well, maybe something needs
It's outside
further
of this.
research that we
It's
don't
outside of this.
necessarily need to decide tonight.
Right.
I think they're two completely different things. We do pay for range time so that they can go out there because we take over the range for 6 hours or whatever, and all the officers can go out there and shoot, and we require them to qualify. I would caution against putting something like that in the ordinance, number one, about we would pay for the training tower. That would be a board policy decision. But mutual aid is everything. We cross-train with other departments all over, and it's not, if we get into a position where like, you guys gotta pay if you wanna come and use the tower over here. We want these guys to be as well-trained as possible in case they have to come and back us up. And I think that's where, if you get the recommendation from the firefighters or Chief Burdette, I think that's the side they're gonna fall on. That it wouldn't be, the amount of money that you probably wouldn't take in anyway for the use of that training tower isn't enough to make it worth that policy and the ill will that we create amongst other firefighters.
Well, I think, what Mr. Massey had suggested in terms of splitting the costs of the maintenance of that building. While I think it's, you know, appropriate that everybody pay their fair share for that, I'm thinking that we're having trouble just getting paid for the kitchen right now.
Right.
I'm not sure throwing the training tower on there is going to add fuel to the fire.
But, Mr. Chair, just a thought, this is a question for a thought. What happens if you have to, in the future, you have to invest $100,000 into the training tower?
74,000 was,
Pretty
you don't
close.
have to get up that high. 74,000 was a big chunk of change, Mr. Massey.
So you feel very happy about the 74,000 coming from the township?
It had to be done for the safety of the firefighters using that facility for training. The training that goes in there and the changing of the temperature and the smoke could have made that very unsafe for them, and we don't need them training in something that isn't safe.
It's worth discussing, I think. I mean, I don't know what everybody else's perspective, Mr. Guzak.
Well, I think it all goes back to, you know, if we own the building, we have to take care of it. So we own that building, we build it, and so we've got to take care of it. And I don't want somebody from another community coming in and get injured in our building because we're not taking care of it. So, the policy was always in the past, if you own the building, you take care of it. We didn't hesitate to take care of that building because we owned it, okay? And that's the way it's always been. But right now, we're trying to make sure that we keep that continuity and make sure it's clear in the contract where we didn't need that in the past, but we just want to make it clear that since we're making changes, we're going to clear it up.
I think the other problem too with, if, Mr. Massey, if we have other people helping to maintain something, it assumes some ownership maybe. I don't know. You know, if the city starts maintaining a building in our parks, I don't know, it probably legally doesn't mean that it's theirs, but let's say that they do make a major expenditure on repairing the tower.
I'm waiting for where you think the city's gonna take money and put it in Bicentennial Park.
No, I'm just saying if they were to maintain that tower, let's say, and put a small fortune into it, and then for some reason we were to dissolve down the road, how do you know, I think it might be a lot cleaner just to say, you know what, everybody pays for their own buildings and we leave it at that.
I think respectfully, Mr. Massey's point is well taken and well considered, but it sounds to me there's consensus to.
Right, to abandon that idea.
Change that language. And again, not to cut anybody off on any questions or issues, but I just want to quickly get through, we changed shall to may in Article 11, recognizing our responsibility and obligations as the employer. And by the way, one of us had to be the employer, and because we were doing a fair amount of the administrative work at that time, we decided to take on that role. Plus I believe we're better suited for that, to provide not only the service, but in a very efficient way and very professionally. So I wouldn't, if I were the city, I would see that as a relief.
Yeah.
And by the way, we do consult with them. They have input on our hiring and other matters. And then finally, Article 13 is a dissolution language. Interestingly enough, there was dissolution language in the joint resolution back in 1990 that just said that I think the 90-day provision was included in that language. The language regarding a mediator, I think, is where you'll end up. You might as well acknowledge it and realize what the process will be. And so if anybody has any comments or issues with that language, we'll leave that language there. And then I want to go back to where we started. I don't think, it doesn't sound to me, let's not just put a pin in this and be done with it. Let's take another shot at trying to figure out a funding scale. We had a sliding funding scale which basically relieved you of the responsibility of trying to negotiate a contribution millage rate. You could find yourselves back there if you want. You could not do anything. You could say we're going to pass a half mil, or we're going to pass a 1 mil, and we're going to intend to contribute up to a half mil and we'll negotiate that every year. You could do that. But let's let Mr. Lehman and I try to put our heads together. By the way, anyone who wants to participate in this process is welcome. But let us take another run at it. And why don't we, if we have room, I know you're busy in November, but if we've got some room, maybe at committee of the whole or something like that, where we can look at this again, maybe that's what we should do. If you would like, if you want to talk about the potential millage language tonight, we can do that, because that's still in play, obviously, and the only other thing that might affect that millage language is if you decide, if you come back in 2 weeks and say, no, let's try to find an amount that we can lock ourselves into for a period of time in this agreement, whether it's a sliding scale, whether it's some other combination. That would be the only thing that would potentially affect your millage, except that you're both gonna ask for 1 mil. And it's just, how are we gonna do it? Because we're gonna collect it, we're gonna go for a millage in 18. We're gonna go for 1 mil, and we've already got, as you can see in these examples, we've already got, currently we're gonna collect, I think, 4.4993 mils. That originally started out as a half mil. And so we're gonna have to let the voters know that we're not gonna collect that amount of money, and that, in fact, we want an increase. And it's written out for you in a couple different ways. One way, item number one, or proposal number one, talks about replacing the current fire millage of 0.4993 mils, which that is your current fire millage, due to expire in 2019, and then we say with an increase of 1. And then we add, you might find this redundant, but we also add a sentence that says, we will not collect the previously approved half mil due to expire in 2019. I didn't have that language in there. Kathy proposed it because she felt it was clear, more clear, and more descriptive of what we have in mind.
For the residents.
Well, those are the folks that are going to
those are the
pull the
ones
lever.
that have to read it and make a decision on it.
Right, and item number 2, and by the way, the replacement language is interesting. It's language that was used by the county parks because they wanted to increase their millage amount over an existing millage, and so they used that replacement language, which is an interesting precedent. Number 2 reads more like a traditional millage, asks for an increase of up to 1 mil. And then it says that we're not going to provide, or we're not going to collect the previously approved half mil. And then Kathy, what do we have for 3?
3 was using my choice that I think throwing out too many different numbers.
The only thing that's different is previously approved half mil versus current fire millage of 0.993. And there was some discussion today of whether or not, when people look at a current fire millage of 0.4993, they think, well, what is that? And it's the result of the Headley rollback.
Right.
And so Kathy said, let's call this the previously approved half mil, so people at least maybe can go back in time and
It will
recognize that.
associate and be clear.
Chairman
Mr.
Bennett, I'll just throw out here that I like the language in number 3 best of all.
Score one
Just
for me.
I'm just
I suggested
that's
that
my
to Kathy.
well, both of
you
you
did
two.
not.
You're the smartest people you got today.
So we have one favorable comment for number 3. Is there?
I'll give it
There's two.
my own opinion on
There's
my own.
4. All right, so it looks like number 3 is
I'm
our.
gonna may I make a
Sure.
comment?
Sure, Mr. Massey.
I have to go for number 3 because the first sentence in number 2 is more confusing when you're in the voting booth, which may be imposed each year.
Yeah.
So you're agreeing with Ms. Lane?
For the first time. For the first time.
I don't want to interrupt this admiration fest, but the one thing I want to make sure is that we meet the technical requirements of the statute. And so what we'll do is we'll say we're looking at number 3, subject to any sort of review or comment from the county, for example. We did talk about, early in our meetings, we wanted to arrive at our millage language by December, and Mr. Supervisor Bennett said this at our first joint meeting. I think we can be on track for that, but we will have to adopt a resolution that formalizes this language, and then we'll have to submit that to the county for their approval and placement on a ballot. And so we're going to have to decide when do we want to ask for this millage increase?
Okay, Ms. Lane?
Well, I will still also make a request or a recommendation, whichever term you prefer, to go for a May election because we have both a mosquito millage and the fire millage, and we also have new equipment rolling out, and I'd like to make it easy for everybody, but also have the opportunity for our election workers to have a rollout of everything prior to a very busy August when, if you look back at August and November, they have multiple millages. And if you get too many, people don't go all the way down to the end of the ballot, or they go down and say, no, no, no. So I think it's good training, but I think it's putting the priority for our taxpayers where it needs to be on the quality of life they want here and not confusing it with county and state proposals.
So Ms. Lane, you're suggesting May?
May,
So if you went with May, you would have to go 3 months earlier for submitting it?
15 weeks, right.
So that would be
The very
for spring,
beginning of
yeah.
January at the latest.
So we would have to definitely have it nailed down in December if we
Right.
shot for that. Mr. Guzak and then Mr. Massey.
Yeah, I just have a question. If we do go in May, is there additional expense to the township?
We can minimize the expense.
No, is there an additional expense?
There will be because you're
And
printing
how much is that, about
ballots.
$10,000?
Yes.
And so I would not want to go with May. I don't want to put an extra burden on our taxpayers that they have to pay $10,000 to have an election when we can have it later. And there's 2 shots. We still have 2 shots, so if it doesn't happen or whatever, it's not like you're eliminated down to 1 shot.
So you're saying August or November?
August or November.
August will be
To save $10,000 so our taxpayers don't have to.
August will be the
We can
primary.
use that money for OPEB
Okay.
debt.
Mr. Laddie and then Mr.
Just
yes.
one comment, and this is something, Kathy, I don't know if you know the answer to, but there's for some reason in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that if we have a May election, that first year millage might be subject to a Headley rollback versus August or November, and that's something that we're gonna have to lock down, right? Because if we don't want to have the rollback in the first year.
No, that would be up to Becky to, that's not my
Right.
expertise at all.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll research that. Mr. Massey?
Just one comment. I'd like for the board to keep in mind, the November election next year, there will be many, many things on that ballot. Just keep that in mind. So I don't know whether it's a favorable comment or a negative comment.
Well, we have another month to
We
think
could
about.
place it on the primary, and we have an August primary, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Next
Yeah,
year
sure.
is the selection for governor,
I
secretary of
understand.
state and everything.
And so, I guess I don't have a problem with August or November, but if we're trying to figure out where we stand, we'd know earlier.
Right. I think August is better than November.
Chairman, I'm a little more in favor of an August timeframe. I think that we actually need a little bit of time here to sell this concept up to the residents and kind of get some support behind that. And also, just reflecting back on the situation with the 911 millage last May in the township, that was actually decided, of course, not in the township, it was actually decided by 43 votes. So, I mean, the amount of people voting in May is pretty slim, and it just seems like, and I understand the crowding out the issue that Clerk Lane raised, but we really want to give the people a chance to vote on this. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like you have, Clerk Lane discussed May. I think Clark, Al, and Earl were all in favor of August. Joe is in favor of November. So
No.
You're in favor of, I'm sorry, you're in favor of August?
Yes.
Okay. So what you've done basically is, I think, ruled out May.
Sounds
But-
like it.
But we also, let's find out about the Headley rollback.
Yep. Yep.
And then we will have this, then again, we'll formalize this language from a legal perspective. I'll run it by Peggy at the county and be ready for you to consider a resolution as early as December if you want to do that.
a
And that
slight.
doesn't mean you would have to pick your election at that point in time. If you're not gonna go in May, you can put it off until January,
Right.
February.
I'd like to know when the board prefers that we give this, both the ordinance and the ballot language to the city for their consideration.
Mr. Laddie?
Well, the ordinance isn't ready yet, I don't think. I think we
Okay.
wanna take one more run at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Village language, they don't need.
yeah, the millage language isn't, it isn't gonna affect them, right? They're gonna write their own millage language. The
Right.
one thing that we do need to point out to them is that we're not gonna tie bar our language with passing in the city or township. And that, you all agreed on that, is that true?
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So, let's, we'll get you another version of the ordinance to consider in November, and we'll keep at it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're back on the consent agenda items now, Scott.
Yeah. Okay, moving to the consent, the items that were on the consent agenda items, under consent agenda. A, approval of treasurer's report. Mr. Guzak?
No, I have no comment on it. It's just our normal.
Chairman Bennett?
Yes.
So I asked for this, so here's what I'd like to have a little information on. On page 7 of the itemized detail, on page 7, there's a check in the amount of $84,500 to Paradise Developers. And I'd like to know what the detail, what the itemized detail of that is about. It seems to be this second largest single expense other than payroll and insurances.
Mr. Lemata?
The, what you're seeing is a reduction in an amount, probably the easiest way to explain this is when the township constructed some laterals underneath Saginaw Street to get to the property where the Security Credit Union buildings are. Paradise Developers that own the property and Security Credit Union put up a letter of credit in cash, guaranteeing that $200,000 in tap fees would come back to the township within 5 years for us to construct so that we could have the utilities onto that property. So we've held on to that, and we're 3 years into it. We've collected $130,000 so far in tap fees, or capital fees, for the reimbursement. So we had a request from Paradise Developers if we would refund some of that cash and lower it down and still remain the $70,000 that is what would still be owed to us if we don't receive any future tap fees. So that what you're seeing is that $84,000 is a refund back for their portion. They put $130,000 up. They're getting $84,000 back. The letter of credit that Security put on, they were able to lower their letter of credit that guaranteed the amount back for that $200,000. So we still retain the $70,000 that we need to make sure that we're made whole within that time frame. We wrote up a new agreement, and that's what you're seeing.
Okay, thank you.
That was something that Earl and I both questioned, and we had a discussion today, so.
And basically, it's just their own deposit. They deposited
Perfect.
it, and
Got
we're
it.
just reducing it down, and we're still covered.
Got it.
Okay, item B.
Well-
Board.
You have to,
Do you want to do a motion then
A
for
motion
each
to-
of these?
yeah,
okay.
since
Yeah. Yeah,
I would
okay.
move that we approve the treasurer's report. Mr.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item B, the board will consider a motion to grant parcel ID 12-06-553-090 as township surplus property and allow the parcel to be sold to the highest bidder. This is a vacant lot on Harding Drive with no value to the township. Mr. Lemata?
we were approached some time ago by a new property owner who had purchased a parcel next to this vacant township-owned parcel and inquired whether we would be interested in selling that property. About 2 weeks later, the folks on the other side made the same inquiry. We ran it through DPW to make sure that there was never a reason that we would ever need this parcel for anything from easements from sewer, water, anything like that. And nobody can even really tell me why we ended up owning this property. The only thing I can assume is that it was one of those tax reverted properties that we forgot to reject in December, so that means it automatically reverted back to township ownership. We've held on to it for a number of years, it has no value for us moving forward, and we did want to put it out on sealed bids, which we did do. So what this request is for the board to consider a motion just to grant it as township surplus property, which will allow it to be sold to the highest bidder.
Mr. Mansour?
Chairman Bennett, thank you. Mr. Limita, where is this property?
The presidential streets up on the
Off of Fenton Road,
Okay.
east side of Fenton
west
Road.
corner of
Okay.
the township.
So you're saying that we went through a typical routine where we advertise this somehow in public, so over so many days
Blanc
or
View.
whatever, and, okay. All
Grand
right.
Blanc View, the website, we sent letters to the adjacent property owners.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. So I'll consider a motion from anyone on that.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in
Is
favor?
that Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item C, the board will consider a motion to authorize the sale of surplus vacant property at parcel ID 12-06553-090 N-2491 to the highest responsive bidder, Sandra and Larry Archambault, for $500, and authorize the township superintendent to execute all required agreements.
I will move, Mr. Chairman, that it be approved. That was the only bid that we received.
Support.
Discussion?
Yes.
So, Mr. Lehman, I didn't hear you say a little while earlier that there was some interest and then there was more interest from the person on the opposite side?
Correct, and the letters went out to both adjacent property owners. And again, like I said, the advertising, we gave them a little over a month or 6 weeks to respond. We accepted sealed bids through October 19th at 2 o'clock. The only bid we received was this one. The other property owner did then contact a couple of board members and expressed an interest in the property, but they were too late. They'd missed the sealed bid process window.
Thank you.
And they did receive, at least it didn't come back to the township, the letter that was sent to their address.
Okay.
Okay, so there's been a motion and it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think future positioning, we said that we were going to defer our discussion on fire department proposed budget till our November 9th meeting. And so we'll go to what we're hearing from the community, if there's any issues.
Wait. Are you, we moved the fire department proposed budget out to November, but we also have the proposed general fund and special revenue fund budgets for discussion for this evening for the board.
Okay, so you'd like to discuss those? Okay.
So you have before you the version 2 of the proposed 2018 general fund budget was provided at your board tables. There's also a sheet attached in there, or should have been on top, that details the changes that were made based upon board discussions from September 1st, when you first received the budget electronically, until today's date. And I just want to highlight some of those. The net effect for our revenue is that the supplemental payment of $30,456 is a one-time supplemental payment approved by the legislature that we have included in revenue that wasn't in there prior to this budget. Also, $100,000, and again, this is our best guesstimate on the personal property tax reimbursement from Lansing. Last year, we received $307,000. However, that having been said, we were told at the time that it was far exceeded what we would receive moving in the future. There is not a specific formula that will allow us to figure out exactly what we're going to get. But I do know that we're going to get something. And based upon what we saw last year, I have an educated guess that it's going to be a minimum of $100,000. I actually believe that it might be higher, maybe more like 125 or in that region. But because I don't know and it is just an educated guess, I wanted to make sure. But I also wanted to include it in the revenue, and last year it was impossible for us to include it, so when we approved the 2017 budget, there was no way for us to know that it was going to be $307,000, so that did come in this year and impact us, which is fantastic that we got that kind of a reimbursement on the personal property tax. It will be considerably less, but that is in there for an additional revenue total of $130,456 that wasn't in prior to. Also, the expenditures that have been approved by the board were the wage increases for our independent contracted and myself assessing the GIS-IT director, and we had planning and zoning and adjustment to healthcare coverage. That comes from somebody adding additional healthcare that prior didn't exist. Also, you see under the police, $11,675. That's an adjustment to a retiree healthcare who added a spouse that we weren't aware of prior to it going out to you. And then we increased the appropriations to OPEB by the amount of $59,466 from what you saw prior to. So again, the total adjustment to the expenditures equals $130,456. I skipped over the finance adjustment to wages and fringes, and that is a subject that I'm going to ask the board to consider going into an executive session for this evening. Director Sostak's contract will expire tomorrow, I believe. She and I have been in negotiations for over a month, and as I explained to you in a prior session, that she was working hard to restructure her package a little bit differently. I do have that information for the board to consider this evening. But I put it in there as kind of a superintendent approved adjustments to the wages and fringes so that it would be under the consideration in this version 2 of your budget. It appeared that in our prior conversations, it appears that the board is not interested in going through the budget line by line. I know that you have had it for quite some time now, and we said we would be happy to hold additional just budget hearings. We can do them here from, starting at 4 to 6 or whatever would work for anyone who is interested. If they want all of the department heads available or certain department heads available, but it appeared to be the board's consensus so far to date that nobody was asking for those meetings. And same thing with this evening's discussion. I asked if the board would like to have the department heads available to answer any specific questions. It appeared that the consensus was to not have them here. I just need to know now how we move forward. If this evening, if you want to go through tab by tab and give me any specific concerns that you may have, again, based upon the budget, it's not incredibly different than what you saw last year or the year before that, for that matter. Again, we continue to look at this as an austerity budget. We're not instituting new programs. The only addition here was, again, putting the full-time planner's position in. It is advertised. We do have 2 very qualified candidates who have responded. One of the things we did is we changed that wage to salary range, and we pushed it up about $12,000 over what we had prior advertised, and it looks like that may have been the key to attracting some more quality candidates. We're excited about that. The only other position that was created, the police will now have 43 sworn officers if you adopted this budget as presented. We still cut about $220,000 or $240,000 out of their budget request. Trying to find some areas where we can save. It's not that I don't like the police department. I think they're fantastic, but they also make up a considerable amount of the $14 million that you have at your discretionary spending. And so because they have the biggest budget, they get the biggest cuts, unfortunately, for them. But I think they will still be able to operate. We were able to increase it to 43 sworn officers. I think if you look at the overall, we again are able to recommend putting money towards OPEB. As you're well aware, this year with bringing down the fund balance to the board mandated levels, we had about $1.7 million that we were allocated. $1 million, which the board has done on a previous budget amendment into the 2017 amended budget to be allocated strictly towards OPEB. There's also $700,000 that we will still intend to allocate towards the defined benefit, MERS defined benefit police pension plan. We don't have those big expenditures available for 2018, but again, it depends on when 2017 comes in, and like I already explained to you, we had a $307,000 increase coming in from the essential services personal property tax reimbursement. I believe that we'll have another good year in 2017, and I believe we'll be able to make a recommendation to continue to go after those unfunded liabilities, which remains my mandate from the board, not to increase spending anywhere, to try to hold down spending. Some of the other things that we had to increase were training. I think that we need to invest in our people. I think as you go through here, you'll see in this most recent budget revision, I increased another $8,000 strictly for being able to spend on some training. And one of the things that we're looking at doing with the training is that increase of $8,000 will allow us, and I put it under the superintendent's area, it will really be spread out for everyone. It's more customer service based. It's a $2,000 in-house training that will be conducted here once per quarter, focused primarily on customer service. A lot of the talks that we've been having as our staff meetings is now that we're changing to more of a performance-based look at how we go through this, and we're looking to establish our benchmarks and use performance management as our guide on moving forward. You'll see more of our emphasis on that as the next year's budgets come back to you, where they're going to be talking a lot more about where their benchmarks are, what we're tracking, and how we're getting, how we're looking compared to other people around us. Again, from here, you've had the opportunity to digest it, and you guys just need to tell me how you want to proceed. If you want to go through tab by tab and let me know if we think we're missing the mark in any specific area, I would be happy to do that. If there's any specific questions I can answer for you this evening, I would. If there's a specific department manager that you would like to come back, we do have both building official Ted here and Chief Wiles is here as well from the police budget, and I'm sure they would be happy to answer any questions that the board may have for them.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would like to have my questions in the next meeting, okay, because I need time to digest this and make a comparison. I mean, for me, just off the cuff asking you questions which have no meaning to me, I wouldn't be asking an intelligent question. So at the next meeting, I think it would be more appropriate.
And Mr. Limita had suggested also that if we wanted to have a work session, I don't know if everybody could make it at 4 o'clock on some day, and have department heads there that would, be able to help explain anything. That would be something that Mr. Limita would arrange as well, if we had board members that would want to participate in something like that. So I don't know, he's looking for input. Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, I've got a question. I know in the last budget that I received, there wasn't any, the police department wasn't in it at all as far as the breakdown of the, all the employees like it is, but this one does have it in it.
Yeah, you should have had it last time too.
Yeah, it wasn't in my pack. Maybe I was the only one that didn't get it, but.
No, it wasn't
And in this one, and one question I had was, I know we hired a new police officer, a couple of them, of course, and then I think one of them left, after a short period of time, and I thought there would be a column in here for a new police officer, but I don't see one in here, a vacant police officer, so.
Yeah, there is.
There is, I don't see, I went through the pages and maybe I missed it. It starts out with the chief of police and then it goes through.
Well, how would we, I guess I'd like to look at the process before we get into individual questions on how we want to handle this, because before we get too far into the weeds on specific questions right now.
Chairman
Yes.
Bennett, I agree with Trustee Massey that I'd like a little time to look this thing over. Personally, I don't envision, a department by department review, but I'm sure there are some issues that will jump out that I would like an opportunity to get information on.
So maybe we review it, and rather than having every department head here, maybe we communicate to Mr. Limita which department, if you have questions, and so that department head could be there. Similar to Mr. Guzak's question, that we can have the police chief available at the next meeting if we can't answer it tonight, but.
Evidently, it's not in there. Did you find it?
Yeah, there's 2 new hires in there.
There's 2 new hires
Where is it at?
and a lieutenant.
I know, I'm just trying to.
It's,
Well, I've got the spot that's got a lieutenant, but I don't have the 2 new
keep
hires.
going.
Last page.
Well, the last page.
It's
I've got
not, it's
Whitney,
the
Conway,
second last page
Webb.
from Fire Commission.
After Webb, and then it goes to, okay, here it is. That's new hire. Okay, you're right. So after
So there's
Webb, okay.
New hire, new
a
hire.
proposed lieutenant
Well,
another
no, I'm on,
lieutenant.
the page I'm on, it's got the 2 new hires,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
so that's those 2. Then my other question is, back on the first part, we got a lieutenant for 4 months, and I don't remember what that is, because that's a brand new employee, right?
Because
Yes.
we don't intend to have that position filled until the end of the third quarter in 2018. So it's not budgeted for the full year, it's only budgeted in there for
Last
that
4 months.
Right, so
promotion.
our
or-
intention is to have 2 lieutenants, right? Because in the
Correct.
past, we didn't, you know, well, we had 2 captains and 2 lieutenants, and then we reduced it back to 2 captains and didn't have lieutenants, and now Matt Simpson, there's a new lieutenant, and then now you've got another one that you're setting up.
Correct.
Okay, because I wasn't aware, that, to me, that's a new item, I didn't realize.
That is 2.
That's why it's before you as your budget. This is the request, and I took down, I don't remember, I'd have to go back through my notes, to be honest with you right now, to pull how many the request was, but in the end, we took his request back down. We're still been trying to get to, and if you look at the very first page that's before you, a command staff of 3, and sergeants of 6, 3 detectives, 30 patrol, and then what you'll see is that we're talking about that command structure. We've been talking about this for quite some time. It'll currently exist of the chief, a captain, and a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Right.
Next year, our recommendation is that we move to the chief, captain, and 2 lieutenants.
Okay, well, that was.
But the second lieutenant would not be coming in until in October of the year.
Right, I guess I just wasn't aware of that, because you said there was no additions, and that actually is an addition, because once you have them for 4 months, we're not gonna, you know, say you're only here for 4 months, you're not gonna be here next year, right?
Right. It's a
We're gonna
change in
hire
the command structure, but this is the same command, this is the same exact structure that we talked about last
Yeah,
year.
we talked about it, it's not new.
Yeah, but I thought, when we talked about last time, the one board said they weren't gonna go back to 2 lieutenants, I'm just.
And that's why it's before you now. If you decide you don't want to have another lieutenant, then the board will eliminate that position during the budget conversations through consensus, and we will eliminate that position.
Well, that's fine, I was just, somehow I didn't understand that there was a new position.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey?
Superintendent raised an issue that I have to ask a question about. It's not for me to really decide, it's for the chief to tell me what he needs. And then from there, we determine what we should do.
And that's exactly what's before you right here.
Yeah,
If you read, and we didn't put the narratives in here because you already had them in your original thing, and we didn't want to rerun the whole thing. You'll read through your narratives, you'll see what his recommendations were, and then as you look through your budget, you'll see the difference between the 2018 department requested budget for salaries and wages was $3,317,372. You're seeing that the manager's recommended budget was $3,262,476 because we cut that back. Right now, that board approved budget column reflects primarily either changes that you have already approved as you go through this budget, like the salary increases to the independent contracted department heads, or it'll be exactly the same as the manager's recommended budget while we wait for the board's consensus on changes that they want to make. If you want to eliminate the, additional lieutenant's position, you can do so, and we'll change that column.
Right.
If you
Well,
want
that
to
was-
eliminate a couple patrol officers, the new ones, we'll do that, we'll change that column.
Right, that wasn't my intent. My intent was to find, I didn't have it in my pack, okay? And I thought we should have 2 spots that had those 2 people, because I knew we had 2, we replaced one of them, but then they left, so I figured there'd be 2 left. And then I was surprised that the lieutenant was there. I'm not saying, I just was surprised.
Yep,
to see
no,
it, 'cause
I
it's the
don't
first
know
time
why
I've
you
seen
didn't
it.
have it last time, Treasurer
Right,
Buzak.
I wasn't questioning the chief's, what he wants to propose. I'm just saying it wasn't there before, and I was just surprised to see it.
Chairman Bennett?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Massey.
So I have a question and then maybe a comment. So I was looking at the revenue portion of this, and I noticed that One year to the next, there's some funding that we'd collected and dispersed, so I understand that's lower. But there's also a Parks and Rec millage in there for about $290,000 that was there last year. It is not there for this year. Doesn't the Parks and Rec millage, I mean, isn't that, year over year, or how is it reflected here?
Yeah, the Parks and Rec millage is in here for this year. And if you show me exactly where.
So if I'm on, these pages aren't numbered that well, which is actually another comment that I have. But anyway, if you were to go to the first page, just after the yellow revenue one, and I'm down the fourth row of numbers, I see amended budget 2017, $291,250. And then I go over to 2018, and there's nothing on that revenue line.
So if you look at the Parks and Rec millage, if you look at, I'll go to appropriations and transfers, and you'll find, let me find it for you, transfer out Parks and Recreation. So where that one went in there is we take the millage in, and so you see that 291,250 under the 2017 amended budget.
Check.
When we take the millage in, it gets transferred back over to the revenue at that time. So we still have the millage coming in for Parks and Recreation, and I will go.
I understand that it comes in and goes out. I'm totally okay with that. But how come it doesn't come in every year? Because I think it's on our millage every year.
It does come in every year.
So why wouldn't I see a similar $290,000 in the row that says, whatever, 101,000,404.700? Why isn't there another entry under the 18 proposed budget?
That's probably just a typo.
No.
Lack of typo.
291. No, it is. I think we don't have transferred there.
Still show up.
Our first collection was for 17. That would have been a
I
first.
just noticed a $1 million drop off in our revenue, $1.1 million. I'm just trying
The
to
$1
figure
million
out what it is.
drop off is because of the $1 million that we did the budget amendment to and transferred in from the fund balance to 2017 amended budget.
Well, if we could just find out what the situation is with that.
Yep, I'll answer that
18.
question for you.
Thank you. The other point that I wanted to ask is, I mean, we get a lot of things going on here, but maybe we could have a format for this where we have a kind of a one-page for each department that kind of summarizes what goes on from 17 to 18. Like this position that Treasurer Guzak was asking about in police, it wasn't police or fire, I forget.
So that is in the
Police.
narratives that were included in the original pack that you got, and I give an overall narrative, and then each individual
Okay.
department head provides a narrative for their specific department and the changes that they're requesting.
Maybe we can kind of combine those into a package so we're not kind of tracking back and forth. Just a
Okay.
suggestion.
I mean, it's different than we've ever done it. It's
Okay.
usually included with each
Yeah.
department, so you read it before you go into
Yeah.
that department's budget.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
I requested a line item for the Perry House and all of the expenses, not historical, just what got spent in 2017 as I was signing checks. There was consumer energy, there's security.
Joe, take one and pass it down.
Thank you.
So, I'd be happy to put a Perry House in here. To date, I have not been asked by the board to create a cost center around the Perry homestead because we're not really quite sure what it is. I need direction from the board on if you want to allocate funds towards the Perry. What you're seeing right now is a sheet that's being passed down that's showing you Perry House expenditures as of 10/13 of 2017. Again, some of it was a pass-through. You'll note the donation of $5,000 was received to cover the floors. But the other things come through the Owens Tree Service. That bill was paid for out of our tree protection fund. But most of those end up coming out under public services or building and grounds. We've never had an actual cost center for the Perry House. My recommendation would be to put it under Parks and Recreation and then allocate a certain amount to it so that we know that we're gonna cover our utilities and some of the minor costs that are associated with it. But then it's up to the board to make a decision upon whether you want to allocate any of your $14 million of revenue towards the Perry House, and then give me that amount and we can put it in there so that we know what the expenditures are. I'm not going to put it in there unless I get direction from the board to do so.
Yes, Ms. Lane?
Mr. Chair, and to the board, something that I consider similar to the Perry House where is the McFarland Library, and that's under Public Services rather than under Parks and Rec, because I don't see that the Parks and Rec Commission is going to be overseeing the Perry House. I think that's more internal to the administration in this building. And that's why I'd prefer to see it under Public Services with the library and things like that. And then if we're going to, you know, like the cemeteries, if we're going to put money in there from somewhere else, that's one thing. But I think I am not comfortable with it being under the administration of Parks and Rec, which is jointly with the city. So that's where I would recommend it. Earl and I just signed I signed a $400 and some check for security at the Perry House with the last payroll. So I'm thinking, boy, I'm surprised that the gas and electric aren't higher based on my memory of what I was seeing as utility bills there. But I appreciate having this list, and my recommendation is it's something to me that's more applicable under public service than Parks and Rec.
But I just want to clarify something with Clerk Lane. By putting it under Parks and Recreation, we're not assigning it to Parks and Recreation unless that's what the board wants to do, is assign it to the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm talking about putting it under Parks and Recreation from a cost center standpoint for us. So when you look at Parks and Recreation right now and what we do with it, it has more to do, under public services and what we're doing with the township's contribution to Grand Blanc Parks and Recreation, and we have $169,282. You'll find that on the Public Services tab. Go down to the bottom, look up just above the second blue line, you'll see $169,282. That is a line item for the contribution to the Grand Blanc Parks and Recreation. So that's our contribution there. Now, if you'll look at the rental, the township share, that's broken out a little bit differently. Below it with Parks and Recreation rental that we pay, so you're seeing some expenses, you're seeing that expense that we allocate over there. It would be more calling it like under Parks and Recreation Perry House, and then allocating some funds there and allowing those expenses to come out of that expense budget. It would not, I mean, unless you guys want to assign it, but I just think we need to do something so we're accounting for it in one place instead of it becoming a wash. It disappears into building and grounds and public services. Otherwise, it's just regular mowing.
And that was exactly why I asked, so that we would start doing it as its own separate line item, so people see the fixed cost of that asset rather than, so that everybody sees it clearly.
I agree with that. I think, and Mr. Massey had his hand up, so I want to go to him next, but just a comment that with regard to where we put it in the budget, one of the things I think we do is we come up with a plan, and then we figure out how we're going to fund that plan.
Yep.
And right now, the plan for the Perry House is in the master plan for Parks and Rec.
Right.
I'm not sure it really fleshes out in detail what we want to use it for yet, but I think if we have a plan, it needs the funds, whether they're managing that building or not, doesn't matter to me, but right now anyways for the discussion. But I think just for the sake of keeping it organized, I think their plan right now is under Parks and Rec, so it should be under their budget. But Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the board. As I recall, in the past, did we have a discussion about the Perry House as far as writing grants? If you put it under certain line items, you cannot write grants, or something like that, I recall. What was that about grants?
Well, I think the senior center, we've said similar things, that we have that under the Parks and Rec, and I'm not, sure it has to be under that, but I think the grant writing, what have you, falls under that. But, I don't know, maybe those are questions that we need to do a little bit more research on, but I certainly like tracking the cost for the Perry House. I'm not sure how much money we have to devote to it. It isn't going to be a kind of a fund to put a bunch of money in.
No, but these are ongoing, normal
Expenses.
things that
Right.
I don't even think the Historic Commission realizes,
That we
but I
pay.
see every month
Month.
that I am
Mhm.
signing for.
Right.
And that's why I thought we needed to start tracking them, just like you would a household budget.
Absolutely. I think we'd all agree with that. Mr. Massey, or who was, Mr. Limita, did you have your hand up?
So, and the other question I want to point out with your Parks and Rec millage is that when you guys go to the capital improvements plan on the tab on the back, and you look at what we have that we've been provided by Parks and Recreation, what her requests are going to be, underneath there you'll see for 2018 a list of breakdown of what they have provided for us, with the amount coming up to $249,500. And when their millage comes in, it goes into a Parks and Recreation only, based upon our millage language question, that it is only a capital fund. So it's going into a Parks and Rec capital fund, can only be spent on capital within the township. When we do the transfers out, it will be as the board approves those expenditures within that capital improvement plan provided by Parks and Recreation. Right now, it's listed as $249,500. We actually are going to have in about $304,000 coming in for the year. Why that's not all in there is because I didn't agree that some of those were actually capital improvements. There were some field maintenance items and some other things that I didn't believe belonged in a capital improvement plan. I believe those are operating expenses. So what she had provided to us as what their intended expenditures were going to be. The ones that are in here, I believe, are capital, would definitely be considered as capital expenditures. But all of the ones that they had in their list that would have showed them using up all that money, I did not agree with. That would be completely, would be considered as capital.
Ms.
Mr.
Lane?
Limita, where I was before, when any department head was going to be projecting a capital expenditure, they supplied documentation from, let's say, 3 valid companies to at least validate their work. Do we require that in any way, or are we simply putting it in a line item?
When they provide for the capital improvements plan, they provide a detailed sheets that come in where they rate it on whether it is essential, desirable, deferrable, and they put their projections together based upon their research. They'll come back and they'll include, especially higher price ticket items, will have something that it says it's this much. We're not going to have them go through 3 bids or anything until that capital improvement project has been approved by the board, and then it would come back to the board's going to approve all of those individually, and that's when it would go out for 3 prices. We're not going to do it just to get it into the capital projects plan and then do it again 2 years later when we get ready to actually make the purchase.
Okay, I received, and I hope I sent it on to the appropriate people, and you may not have had time to put it in here for the library, but the carpet for the library, or part of the carpeting for the library.
I
didn't have a chance to, again, like all of us, we haven't had a chance to go through the pages, but that's something I just remembered I had from the library this week.
It was after this budget was already put out. If you look under public services, about a third of the way down the page for 47.5, that is the contribution to the Grand Blanc Library. It was put in here at 47.5. The carpeting I have heard mentioned in passing over the last year, but we've never received a request from Grand Blanc Library for carpeting. They've never sent anything directly to the township. They've never made a request of us whatsoever about carpeting for the Grand Blanc Library. Now, we had Larry Anderson, who was the former representative there, who came back a couple times, that there's gonna be something we need to do about carpeting soon.
Okay.
But there was never a complete request. We have never, as a township, received a
Okay.
request from the library.
Then I received an email from Mr. Foote that included different qualities of carpeting, and I thought for sure I had emailed you with it. I'll have to double check my emails then, because it was a remainder of.
And again, if the board wants to, and I don't know what what that contribution dollar amount, right now it's 47.5. If you want to allocate money towards carpeting for the public library, I think that's a worthy cause. I just need to know what dollar amounts you're
Is that a
considering.
50/50 thing, the library? I mean, we own it jointly with the city.
We own it jointly, and right now I think the spending
Mr. Laddie, is that,
Yeah.
We own it jointly with the city.
so the expenditures are split?
60/40, I think.
So they'd have to pay for part of the carpet?
Yes.
I think it's 60/40 split at the library.
So
Do you remember what the price was on the carpeting?
I'm thinking the higher grade was closer to 80. I'm gonna be very upset with myself because I saw it and I thought I needed to get it to you because I
Maybe you did,
believed
and
in
I
We have
it.
some time yet, so.
Yeah.
Well,
We can
I
make
know,
the
but-
change. We're
Resend
not
it to-
approving the budget tonight. We can make the
Right,
change.
but I
But
thought
before I put it
understood.
in there,
Yes, he gave, again, a breakdown on,
Well, let's talk to Mr.
I would like to
Foote
see
and-
that go to the board first for approval before we put it into our budget.
Right.
Because we could really, if we're owners of that building and you guys want to consider that as a capital projects expenditure, I'll include it in the CIP and we can allocate money from our capital projects fund towards carpeting. It's not going to come out of just the general fund, it'll come out of capital and we'll move it over there. I just need direction from the board.
Mr. Lehman, I think what we'll do is I'll ask our representatives on that McFarland board to attend one of our meetings and update us on that, on the plan, because there's probably more than carpeting that we need to know about.
And while we're talking about that, at the same time with the Perry Homestead, we do have that RFP that came in. They'd added quite a few things in there that went above and beyond finishing the kitchen, so I haven't done anything with that because I'm gonna bring that back. I'm gonna call those out of there, bring it back to the board for you guys to look at to see if you do wanna move that forward from an RFP standpoint. But again, that would be a capital projects fund
So we-
expenditure that we would have to allocate money from capital projects fund on a budget
So we were
adjustment.
looking at doing flooring, and the flooring's already been covered, but we were looking at $6,000 to $8,000 for the kitchen to finish that?
It is considerably higher than that.
Okay, to finish the kitchen is considerably higher, or?
Yeah.
yes.
Or there's other things besides kitchen?
I think they were thinking more along the lines of $20-some thousand to complete the projects that they would like to
Okay.
complete.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, going back to the carpet for the library, I have a concern about that. I shouldn't single you out, but I do have a concern. If we're 60/40 with the city, shouldn't the city receive if you're gonna send the superintendent an email of 80,000, shouldn't the city receive an email of 80,000
I'm
too?
hoping that Mr. Foote sent it to the city. I don't want to be the telegrapher between the township and the city. I will make sure, I will look at his email again.
I have a concern with the kitchen. I'm thinking
And
about.
you're getting the fire and the library mixed up.
Well,
No.
the Perry House, we're not splitting with the city.
Oh, no, this was with the library.
Right.
We'll split it. But if we receive a bill for 80,000 and the city doesn't receive a bill, how does the city know that it's responsible?
It's a request, it's not a bill yet.
Well, a request.
Well, let's make sure it
I
goes
make sure
appropriate
I'm-
channels
I'm gonna-
because.
right, I was-
We found out that the kitchen, I don't know, didn't go through the appropriate channel or what have you, and so.
I will just say that I've had no contact with any representatives from McFarland Public Library to make any requests
Okay.
of us whatsoever
Then-
from a capital
And our board hasn't,
improvement
our board
fund.
hasn't requested you to do that either, so I
And
appreciate you putting.
If I do, I'll be happy to forward to the board for consideration, but
Right.
but to date, I just
Okay,
haven't
then
had
it's,
it.
I was
Okay.
sure I had sent you his
let's
email
move on.
attachment. Okay. Those are my
Anything else that-
concerns.
For the good, how would you like to handle this? We take a look at this, we email Mr. Lehman if there's questions that we have, so we can have the appropriate department head at our next meeting.
Great.
If
We can
there's-
address it at the committee of the whole on November 7th.
Right, and if anybody has any issues that they want to discuss before then, I'm sure Mr. Lehman is open to, bringing in the department head and discussing them even before then.
Okay.
So, anything else on the finance?
The only thing I would like to add is that what you have received so far is the general fund and the special revenue funds. Those are the governmental funds, the $14 million approximately, 14.9, that you have at your, direction to allocate how you see fit. I do have the DPW budget complete. You will receive that for November as well. However, it is enterprise funds, and as you know, enterprise funds are required to be self-funding. You will receive the complete DPW budget for review. The DPW budget doesn't by law require you guys to approve those enterprise funds. We generally will have you do that at the same time you approve the governmental funds. So we'll get you that before November's meeting. You'll have plenty of time to look through that before we can get your questions addressed by the DPW before you're actually seeing that on the December 14th meeting is what we have slated for approval of the budget.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lehman. Anything else on that, guys? Okay. Moving on to future positioning, and I guess we'll move on to what we're hearing from the community. Yes, Ms. Lane?
As I mentioned to you earlier today, Secretary of State Ruth Johnson and her staff will be coming in our building here and using our auditorium Friday morning for a media presentation on the new hard equipment. And as I said, I was glad to extend the use of our facility so that they can present the new equipment out to the public in Genesee County. So that we'll be using the auditorium all day Friday morning.
Just a couple of points here. One is we emailed out to everyone the Karagandhi water pipeline. Basically, the water treatment plant will have its one and only open house on November 9th for board members from various municipalities. This, like I say, it'll probably be the only time that this is open for you to see. It's state of the art. It is on the Homeland Security list, so it will be locked down afterwards and you won't get in. So if you want to see what it looks like, again, it was emailed to you, but it's Thursday, November 9th. And they're hoping that they have good turnout. There's a public hearing on November 7th at the county with the Board of Commissioners, County Board of Commissioners, to discuss whether or not the water should be fluoridated. If the county commissioners don't take any action, the water will continue to be fluoridated. Or they could put it up for a vote of the county.
What is the date on that, Mr. Chairman?
November 7th. Of the public hearing?
Yes.
That I don't have yet, but it'll be published by the county.
Okay.
The other point I wanted to bring up was that the Grand Blanc Chamber has a special guest speaking on December 8th at Warwick Hills Golf and Country Club, and that's our own Dennis Limata. And not sure what, well, I guess the topic is Made in America, or no, I guess that's the overall topic. So I don't know, Mr. Limata, do you know what the topic will be of your talk at this dinner?
Well, I tend to be extemporaneous when I have to do those things. However, off the cuff, it's going to be talking about the everything that we have going on in the township, what we've seen through 2017 and what we can anticipate through 2018, of the phenomenal growth that we've experienced, and it should be brief and riveting.
So Friday at noon, Friday, December 8th, so if you can
Could you
make
send
it.
that information out, Mr.
Sure, we'll send it out. Actually, I put at your place this year, both flyers.
Oh.
If you want to go
It's
to
buried under the
to the
paper.
water treatment plant, you need to let me know, because I need to send in an RSVP. And they aren't going to let people in that are not on the RSVP. So if you don't RSVP, you're not going to get in. So if you want to go, let me know and email me, or Megan in our office, and let us know that you want to attend. Okay? Anybody else have anything they're
Yes,
hearing in the community?
Mr. Chair, have you
Yes.
gotten any information on the traffic jam on Emory Road?
We've initiated a traffic study, and I don't know, Mr. Lima, do you have any comments?
This isn't the first time that we've initiated a traffic study at the corners of Embry and Cook and Embry at Grand Blanc. However, it appears to have gotten considerably worse. Initially, we thought that it may have been associated with the closures for the ramps at Holly and the different congestions, so people trying to avoid that area. However, it continues, and we did initiate a traffic study from the Road Commission. They did it immediately and got out there. They're doing traffic counts. I know that previously, especially at Embry and Grand Blanc, the proximity to the light at Dort and Grand Blanc Road make it real tough to do something as far as getting another light at Embry, because there's not enough room for stacking. Be an excellent candidate for a roundabout potentially, but that's $1 million in a few years of planning. I know we have to do something. The one business down there, that's a new business that opened, had requested, can we at least put like a four-way flashing light. But again, there's a problem with those busiest times also create some issues with stacking if you have a four-way flashing. If you're stopping them on Grand Blanc, between Grand Blanc and Dort, there are going to be issues. So we don't have an easy fix for that, but it is being studied. We know we need a resolution. We just don't know what that is at this time.
I think our police chief also sent a few officers out there to monitor it and see if there's anything that could be done.
Yeah, we haven't. We can stand there and direct traffic, but other than that, our ability to reduce that congestion is minimal right now.
Make sure our officers stay safe, though, at that corner. That is a,
Yeah, right. The problem with trying to direct traffic there would just be, that you have traffic coming off of Dort Highway that all of a sudden is going to see an officer standing in the middle of the intersection potentially, and I'm not sure how. I leave it up to our professionals to look at that. Mr. Massey?
My main concern is the issue that the superintendent raised about the new business near the
Mm-hmm.
Grand Blanc Road.
They're reporting to us that it's taking them as much as 15 to 20 minutes to turn left to get out of there to get onto Grand Blanc Road. And that's really unacceptable when you understand that you're stacked back that far, 15 to 20 minutes to be able to get through and get a left turn, especially at 5 o'clock when they're all trying to get home to their families.
Part of the problem there is twofold from what I can see, is the traffic is trying to avoid the intersection at Holly and 75 due to construction, which is still going because they've closed the northbound ramp. But then also the Thompson Road is closed for westbound traffic getting onto US 23. And so everybody from that area that's trying to get on to 23 has to get to Grand Blanc Road somehow. And so they're taking Embry. But I think some of them, I've noticed, I was there at 4:30 today and the traffic wasn't bad at that intersection. I'm not sure what was going on today. But I think maybe some of them are finding they can take Cook Road down to Fenton Road and get to, because I noticed that intersection is heavier at Grand Blanc and Fenton Road right now, but there's a light there. But I think it is in the Road Commission's long-range plan, but I think the Dort Highway extension will help that, as well as when both those other two roads open up. The roundabout at Hill and Belsey is on target for happening next year. So that's an intersection that will be cleared up. Okay.
Is there gonna be some landscaping in that roundabout? I was down in Rochester this weekend.
No, I believe it's going to be paved over.
There's not enough room. It's pretty tight there.
The
Well-
problem with landscaping is someone has to maintain it, and being that it's in a public area, I mean, we could maybe talk to the road commission if we,
Rochester had some low-maintenance
Okay.
greenery there, and
I would be in favor of looking at it if we get our beautification commission going by then.
you want me to join that committee?
We want you to chair it.
We could both handle
Mr.
it in
Guzak?
5 minutes, right?
Yes,
I
Mr.
just,
Guzak?
yeah, I just had a question. You're talking about the roundabout. I think, isn't, there's some expense, is that in our new budget? Or is that next year's budget we have to deal with that?
So the roundabout.
Sorry for bringing that up, but.
They had
You heard
inadvertently,
it.
they had inadvertently forgotten to ask us to approve the expenditure before they sent us the contract to sign. The contract is here. We will put it on the agenda for November 9th. We didn't have the money in our budget this year to just pay it, but we did ask if we could use our 50/50 allocation, and they agreed to that, so it'll cost us $26,000 of our allocation on the 50/50 money. They'll put in an additional $26,000, and we'll allocate $26,000 from our 50/50 money to pay our portion of the
That'll be an 18.
roundabout. That'd be an 18.
The other point too, while we're at it, we did get a quote for paving Pollock Road. If we're going to, Mr. Lehman is going to be helping to organize a meeting. We're sending out letters to those groups in that area. It's not a pretty picture, but it's probably 1.1 million, I believe, for paving that 1 mile stretch of Pollock Road from Holly Road to McWayne. But we'll have a meeting and we'll see who's willing to come up with the money between the county, the residents, and Genesis. So, anyways,
I
just kind
wouldn't
of an
give them
update
a
on that.
penny until Dort Highway is done, because construction equipment will pulverize
Well,
it.
what they're saying is that it would have to be done before the Dort Highway extension, is what the road commission is stating. But anyways, it remains to be seen how we come up with that money. So with that, unless anybody else has anything else they've heard from the community?
What about
Uh,
the
We
executive
have an
session?
executive session, Mr. Lehman mentioned early on, so.
Yep, so if nobody else has anything else, we'll go into, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we go into executive session for contract negotiations. Is
Yeah,
that
that's fine.
appropriate?
Is there support?
Mr. Massey?
Okay, there's support. Ms. Lane?
Yep. Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey? Myself? Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor, or yes, so?
I mean,